Chapter 392. Glancing at everyone's expectant eyes, Han Shao opened the faction interface and put in the Sunil NCO class armor, as well as some low-level machinery blueprints that he did not need previously. The blueprints were only suitable for mechanics, mainly because the NCO class armor was easier to sell. The players had earned extra repair and enhancement fees from the enlistee class armor last time, so the players would not be stingy with the NCO class armor now. There were 3 types of Sunil armor: assault, defense, and reconnaissance. The NCO class armor had all been enhanced. On average, the armor was 3 times higher than the enlistee class armor, and the total attribute bonus was 15 points more. The bonus for melee combat was 20 points, and there were also new accessories. The reconnaissance type moved very fast, jumping high and far, and the chainsaw wrist blade could be ejected from the arm, so it was not afraid of melee combat. The defense type was equipped with heavy firepower, leaning toward long-range combat. It held a large caliber cannon and armor-piercing gunpowder bullet. The gun could be folded in half, and the cannon was about the size of a person. Every time it fired, the gun flame was like an explosion of smoke, and the bullets were like small burning meteors. The shooting speed was very fast, and the gunshots were like drums. The ammunition capacity was 250 rounds, and it came with many extra clips. The assault type had the advantages of both, and it was more comprehensive. Previously, Li Guo had used the secret message bead to exchange for the NCO class armor, which was a reconnaissance type. The others knew the attributes of the equipment, and they were all envious. Now that the faction store was updated, they were all energized and rushed to buy it without any introduction. He set the price at 1,400 anas, and he also set the reputation cost, which was 1,000 reputation. He set the favorability range from 0 to 1,000, and 50 anas could be exchanged for 100 faction reputation. The players had spent 500 reputation to buy the enlistee class armor last time, and after this mission, Han Shao rewarded them with another 300 reputation. In other words, the real cost of buying the NCO class armor was 1,750 anas. The players had received about 5,000 anas from the silvers, and this would cost them 1/3 of it. However, the players did not hesitate. Professional players earned money to buy equipment and increase their combat ability as much as possible. There were 7 NCO class armors in the inventory, and the rest were pre-sold. The players were used to it and never doubted the credibility of the faction. The first 7 people to purchase it received the real thing. The gray metal was thick and tough, with sharp edges and corners. It gave off a strong smell of steel. The silent combat weapon had a unique charm. Mad Blade snatched one of them and quickly put it on. Finally, he put on the helmet and turned it into the combat analysis field of vision that came with the helmet. Everything he saw was marked by a database. At this moment, a mechanical voice sounded from inside the helmet. "Welcome to the Black Star Armor. Your serial number is HA0001. Undergoing automatic inspection. Completion of inspection. Armor status 100. Hydraulic power in good condition. Weapon system in good condition. Ejection system in good condition. User's vital signs normal." Mad Blade tried to move his arms and legs, and the sound of mechanical parts moving could be heard. With the addition of power, his fists buzzed and buzzed. "This set of armor is much stronger than the enlistee class. I bought the reconnaissance type. It's very agile and works well with heavy weapons to reduce the impact of the heavyweight. I can fight more nimbly." Mad Blade was overjoyed. He was a mechanical pugilist and used melee weapons most of the time. The NCO class gave him the biggest boost. The mechanic class was the class with the highest armor buff. Players of other classes could also use it, and the effect was not bad. It increased defense, firepower, and a layer of HP. More importantly, it required the various functions of the armor. For example, a fragile mage could wear a protective armor and fight mindlessly. This kind of mix and match made people feel strange and fun. The Enlistee class and NCO class were standard armor. The stronger Sunil General class was for supers and had stronger attributes. He had not learned it yet. As usual, Han Shao held back when he created the armor, leaving room for improvement. Other than the armor, the few mechanic class players in the faction liked the new blueprint. Every time they gambled on blueprints, they were trembling with fear. Now that Han Shao could directly learn many blueprints, they were overjoyed. The blueprints that Han Shao put up were naturally the unimportant but useful ones. He kept the important ones for himself and released the unimportant ones, which would be more effective. Maple Moon's eyes were shining, and her cute face was filled with joy. Optical disruption trap, this is not bad. Sigh, that scatter cannon is not bad either. Maple Moon could be considered a rather casual and cute girl, but she had also developed a calculative personality after being raised by the mechanic class. A blueprint only cost 300 to 400 anas, which was much more cost-effective than gambling blueprints. She extended her finger and poked it, buying. Han Shao valued the mechanic class players more. Not only was it easier to earn their money because they were of the same origin as him, but they could also become his helpers when they grew up, which might allow him to enter the next stage of the mechanic class in advance. The players of other classes naturally did not care about these blueprints. Only the NCO class armor was to their liking. However, selling things was not the main purpose of Han Zhao's trip. He gave everyone a large wave of faction missions that he had prepared long ago. The rewards were all dungeon crystals. He had cut out some of the later stages of the Germinal organization to form a level 60 dungeon and the most recent battle, Power of the Dragon Emperor. The dungeon crystals could only be used as mission rewards and could not be sold. However, the rules were dead and people were alive. These mission rewards were dungeon crystals, and he planned to use them as repeat missions. There was only one completion condition, and that was to increase a certain amount of faction reputation after accepting the mission. He had set it as increase and not reach a certain value. For example, after accepting the mission and gaining 500 reputation, one would be able to complete the battle, Power of the Dragon Emperor mission and obtain the dungeon crystal. The other low-value dungeon missions could also be completed at the same time, making the players feel that they had profited. This way, it would attract players to spend money to buy reputation. Since one had spent money to buy reputation, they would have to spend it eventually. Faction reputation could only be used by Han Shao, so it was perfect for attracting spending. Furthermore, when one's reputation exceeded 1,000, the cost of purchasing reputation would increase. If one wanted more dungeon crystals, they would have to repeat the cycle of buying reputation and spending money to buy reputation. Although there were no new products sometimes, he had many additional services, such as repair, enhancement, and so on. If one wanted to buy things from the start, these missions would be extra rewards and could be used as promotion. If one only wanted dungeon crystals, they would be able to attract spending. In any case, there was only one purpose of these services. With him, one would never have to worry about not being able to spend money. Han Shao was very mischievous. He only released this mission after the players had bought the armor. He would not let them take it for free. Damn, a new mission that rewards dungeon crystals? The requirement is to increase reputation. What a pity. If we had this mission just now, wouldn't we have completed it directly? What a waste. Actually, it doesn't matter. Anyway, we still have to enhance the armor and so on. Moreover, Black Star's reputation will definitely come in handy in the future. It won't be a waste. Yo, there's a new dungeon, Power of the Dragon Emperor. Isn't that what we experienced a few days ago? It turns out that the faction will not only update the equipment and products, but it will also turn our experience into a dungeon crystal. Everyone was pleasantly surprised. As expected of a growth-type faction, they suddenly felt a sense of excitement. This was an unexpected surprise. After they had followed Black Star to the galaxy, they had never seen a dungeon crystal. They did not expect that this faction would have its own dungeon crystal. After experiencing more missions, there would be new dungeons that they could choose. Seeing this, Han Xiaoxin said, "Oh right, if a faction can provide a steady supply of dungeons, this is also a form of attraction." Everyone was most curious about the Dragon Emperor dungeon. This was a new dungeon that they had never seen before. Among the crowd, Pork Bun saw the battle map, Power of the Dragon Emperor dungeon. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat, and his eyes gradually lit up. This dungeon might be able to reproduce the scene from that time. His heart thumped, and he immediately bought 500 reputation. He touched the dungeon crystal nervously, and a message popped up on the interface. Level 90 Dungeon Crystal Battle Map. Power of the Dragon Emperor Introduction. At the border between the Holy Stone Civilization and the Black Raven Civilization in the Colton Star Cluster's Gavin star system, a mercenary team was pursued by the Dark Star Fleet. At the critical moment, the Dragon Emperor aims descended. This will be your test. Type: Time Reversal Dungeon Limit. 10 people. Current number of people who have passed. 0 Highest dungeon completion rate. None. Record holder. None. Everyone came over. When they saw the item introduction, they were all shocked. A level 90 dungeon crystal. This has already exceeded our level limit. The level of the dungeon crystal did not represent the entry threshold, but the recommended level of the challenge. Even a level 1 newbie could enter a level 60 dungeon crystal, but the result was obvious. Even if they could find a power leveling team, the level difference between the monsters in the dungeon crystal was too large, and there would be a very high EXP penalty and rating penalty. Fighting dungeons could allow players to gain EXP and train their skills, but they would not be able to bring out the equipment from the dungeon. However, after clearing the dungeon, if the rating was high, they would be rewarded with a random item or equipment. These were the benefits of fighting dungeons. There was a limit to the number of dungeons that could be challenged, and they would be refreshed after a certain period of time. If one wanted to obtain top-grade equipment in dungeons, one could forget about it at all if they did not get a top-grade rating. Up until now, players from various planets had challenged so many dungeons, but the number of dungeons that could produce reliable equipment or items could be counted on one hand. Moreover, the difficulty of those dungeons was very high. Not only them, none of the players had ever seen a level 90 dungeon crystal. Everyone was shocked that the Black Star mercenary could give out such a high-level dungeon crystal. Han Xiaoxin smiled inwardly, turned around and left. The NCO grade armor, the blueprint, and the dungeon crystal mission. This trip has earned me a total of 98,000 anas, which is close to 100,000 anas. Adding the savings in my account, I have around 140,000 anas. At the very least, I can buy 3 class advancement knowledges. Han Xiao was very satisfied. After he left, the players in the base could not wait to form a team. They wanted to try out what a level 90 dungeon crystal felt like. Pork Bun formed a team with Mad Blade, Maple Moon, and Hao Tian, 3 of whom he was familiar with. Together with the players from Long Sky and the other clubs, they had a total of 10 people. He crushed the dungeon crystal, spat out a cloud of mist, and enveloped everyone. They entered the dungeon crystal immediately. The world in front of them changed. Pork Bun and the others suddenly could not control their bodies. Their perspective was pulled up, and they looked down at a very familiar planet. It was Fawn Planet 122 where the chase happened. They saw the Silver's spaceship take off and suddenly explode. The Dark Star mothership appeared, and then it sent out a large number of hovering ships to chase after the 3 mercenary spaceships. This was exactly what they had experienced. However, they were all on the spaceship at that time. Now they were seeing everything from the perspective of a third person. It was a completely different experience. "This is a cutscene animation," Hao Tian said in the channel. She was very experienced. Many dungeons had cutscenes, so everyone was not surprised. They just stared at it without blinking. The enormous Darkstar mothership was being chased by a dense hovering fleet, and the 3 mercenary spaceships were running for their lives. It was a very impactful scene. Then, they saw the Sky Ring spaceship suddenly accelerate, and its flight path became extremely erratic. The hovering fleet behind it was being led around like a dog being walked. Wow, this is even better than drunk driving. I remember that Black Phantom was the one driving the spaceship. No wonder the people on the spaceship were so dizzy. Mad Blade still had some lingering fear. The cutscene was about 3 minutes long. This was a copied scene created by the Dungeon Crystal, and not the real thing. It condensed the development of the events and changed it. The mercenary spaceships entering the underground and the Alliance fleet arriving at the same time happened. The cutscene ended there. As the captain, Hao Tian received a notification. The Dungeon Crystal is about to begin. Please choose a faction to participate in. Note: the faction you choose will affect the dungeon completion goal and difficulty. Fugitive Mercenary. Your mission is to escape from the pursuit and hold on until the Dragon Emperor arrives. Darkstar Pursuer. Your mission is to capture a certain number of mercenaries before the Dragon Emperor arrives. Chapter 393. We can actually choose 3 different factions. This dungeon seems to have a lot of processes. Different factions have different missions. Does it mean that we have to clear all 3 factions before we can officially clear the dungeon? Maple Moon analyzed. Don't talk so much nonsense. Which one do you choose? Twinkle Fried Rice asked. Hao Tian pondered and said, This is a level 90 dungeon. We probably won't be able to clear it. We've just come here, so let's familiarize ourselves with the dungeon first. It's best to choose a faction that we're familiar with. Escape Mercenaries. Escape again. Everyone could not help but complain. Escaping was not as fun as catching people. However, most of them were professional players. Even if they knew that it was difficult to clear a level 90 dungeon, they would not back down. Although they were escaping underground and might not be able to see the Dragon Emperor's attack like before, Pork Bun did not know the exact situation of this dungeon, so he did not say anything. Hao Tian chose the camp of the fleeing mercenaries. White starlight appeared at the edge of everyone's vision. Their vision was pulled by an unknown force, and they quickly fell toward the planet. The scenery around them flashed past. Fleets of various colors, white clouds, blue sky, and so on crashed into the grayish-black rocky ground. The next moment, their vision passed through and fell into the dark underground space, returning to the vision of the naked eye. In front of them was a dark and winding underground. Everyone shuddered and regained control of their bodies. They looked down and saw that their bodies were in perfect condition. Not a single part was missing. At this time, a small virtual window appeared in front of the 10 of them. This was the mission list display. Players could set the UI to show some of the information on the panel. Now, the dungeon mission was automatically displayed and could not be cancelled. It floated in the upper right corner of their vision. You are a mercenary on the run. The underground space is filled with Darkstar hovering ships and groups of warriors. You know very well that if you are caught, you will face torture worse than death. Surrounded by an inescapable net, there is almost no way out. However, the reinforcements ignite your desire to live. Dungeon objective: escape pursuit until the Dragon Emperor arrives. Countdown: 12 hours. Reward: 600 experience. Failure condition: all members are captured. Punishment: every time a player is captured, the total reward will be reduced by 10. Optional Mission 1: kill 100 Darkstar soldiers. Reward: 40 experience. Optional Mission 2: destroy 10 hovering ship. Reward: 70 experience. Optional Mission 3: protect 6 mercenaries who are being chased. Reward: 100 experience. Challenge Mission 1: do not trigger the alarm throughout. Reward: 200 experience. Challenge Mission 2: Get rid of your pursuers 5 times without any damage. Reward: 350 experience random events. During the escape, you have a chance to encounter random events. Complete 2 random events and you will be rewarded 300 experience points. Side mission completion count effects. Dungeon clear rating note: when you come into contact with the main character of the event, the objective and difficulty of the instance dungeon will change. When the main character is within 1 kilometer of you, you will be notified. Please choose carefully whether to change your route. After the mission was displayed, a 12-hour countdown timer appeared in the upper left corner of his vision. What a huge amount of information! Mad Blade took a closer look and said, "The ultimate goal of a fugitive mercenary is to survive. If you want a high reward, then you have to be reckless and cowardly." Everyone read through it. How Tion frowned and analyzed. 12 hours is shorter than our actual experience. Moreover, if one member fails, the total reward will be reduced. Therefore, in order to get a high score, all members have to survive until the end and work together. Also, with this kind of mechanism, it should mean that you can betray your teammates. Ahem, but there is a price. Then, the optional mission is only useful when you encounter enemies. It conflicts with the challenge mission. One of the 2 challenge missions is to sneak around, and the other is to cause trouble. This means that you have to make a choice between the optional and the challenge mission. Looking at the comparison of rewards, the difficulty of causing trouble will be higher. Those random events should be unexpected factors. This instance dungeon is very complete. Lastly, it mentioned the main character. This means that we will not follow Black Phantom like before, but will be independent. Before he finished his analysis, the buzzing sound of hovering ships could be heard in front of him. An anxious voice came from his earpiece. "All mercenaries, pay attention. 4 hovering ships are searching the area. Don't stay here. Leave immediately." As soon as the voice finished, the light of searchlights lit up in front of them. Everyone's expression changed. They did not have time to communicate. They hurriedly turned around and ran. This instance dungeon started so quickly. It has only been 2 or 3 minutes, and the enemies are already here, Sleepy Winter said worriedly. The pace of the instance dungeon is too fast. If the enemies are too dense, it will be very difficult to last for 12 hours. After running for a while, the hovering ships behind them moved forward slowly. They did not seem to have noticed them, but their speed was not slow at all. Everyone ran until their stamina was depleted, but the distance between them was not large. The worst thing was that there was only one path in this part of the instance dungeon, and they had not found the fork yet. This was a level 90 instance dungeon, and the difficulty was obvious everywhere. They were only level 60, and they could not even shake off the first wave of enemies. The team was running too slowly, and they would be caught sooner or later. Everyone realized this and discussed in the channel. "Let's stop running. Let's go back and test the strength of the monsters," Mad Blade suggested. "Alright, let's adjust our positions. Mechanics, stand at the back and attack. Espers, move around. Pugilists, go up." How Tion made a quick decision and ordered everyone to form a simple coordination formation. The searchlights approached quickly, and a hovering ship that was only a few meters long appeared. When it noticed everyone, it immediately sped up and flew over. The mini laser cannon on it shot out slender green lasers. Bang bang bang, there was no smoke when the laser cannon exploded. The rock walls and the ground were blasted into pieces. Everyone rushed forward and surrounded the hovering ship. The battle began immediately. At the same time, the countdown frame in everyone's vision suddenly turned red, and a notification popped up. "You have triggered the first level of alert. Enemy reinforcements will arrive in 10 minutes. Hurry, finish the battle in 10 minutes. With the time limit, everyone's expression changed slightly. Their eyes became serious, and they increased the intensity of their attacks. Bang bang bang, all sorts of powerful attacks were thrown at the hovering ship. However, the shield of the hovering ship was not just for decoration. It took a huge amount of damage. The mini laser cannon was not weak, and one shot could take away 200 to 300 health points. Although the damage did not seem high, its attack speed was very fast. If they were Grade B supers, it would be easier for them to deal with the hovering ship. However, they were only Grade C supers at level 60. Furthermore, the players did not have any templates, and they did not have many talents, so they did not have an advantage in terms of attribute. Level 60 players were at the bottom of Grade C supers. Furthermore, even if the players reached level 90 in version 2.0, they would only be Grade C supers. The gap between each grade increased continuously. To them, the hovering ship, which was supposed to be an elite monster, became a boss. As time passed, everyone became anxious, and it was easy for them to make mistakes. In the end, they paid the price of 3 people to destroy this hovering ship in 10 minutes. The remaining people were panting heavily. More than half of their status had been depleted. It's too difficult. The side mission requires us to destroy 10 hovering ships, and one is already so difficult. We even lost 3 people. The level difference is too big, Twinkle Fried Rice said. 3 people were gone, and the total profit was reduced by 30. It had only been 10 minutes, and they had already lost so much. Everyone realized that they were looking for trouble if they entered with their current level. Furthermore, the monsters in the dungeon had been strengthened. When the hovering ship exploded, a few Dark Star soldiers inside had escaped. They were supposed to be ordinary people or low-grade supers, but their levels were a bunch of question marks. They were above level 60. Luckily, the explosion of the hovering ship had reduced the health of the Dark Star soldiers by more than half. Otherwise, the players would have died. The alarm was still going on. Everyone turned around and ran, but the reinforcements came too quickly. They were exhausted and had no choice but to sacrifice their teammates to ensure the survival of the remaining people. However, this was just drinking poison to quench thirst. Not long after, the last Hao Tian was pincered by 2 hovering ships and was captured. Everyone was wiped out and the countdown was fixed. It had only been 30 minutes since the start. Their vision blurred, and they were kicked out of the dungeon and returned to the stronghold. It's gone in half an hour. How are we going to play? Sleepy Winter was speechless. At this time, the other players who had formed teams to clear the dungeon were all kicked out. They were all crushed. After exchanging their experiences and asking around, they all chose the escaping mercenaries. They were all seeking stability. The best result was King Admiral's team, who lasted for 50 minutes. The worst was Fried Eggplants with Fish's team, who encountered the first wave of hovering ships. They couldn't finish off the enemy within 10 minutes and were surrounded by 2 hovering ships that came as reinforcements. However, no one was depressed. After all, the dungeon introduction had written clearly that they were challenging a higher level than them. They were already mentally prepared. Furthermore, if they did not get wiped out 8 or 10 times, how could it be called pioneering? Pro players always liked to challenge high levels of difficulty. Hardcore players would never be defeated by difficulty. Everyone was excited and continued to enter the dungeon. There was a limit to the number of times they could challenge the same dungeon. The game refreshed to 0 every 6 days. The players had obtained some Germinal Organization battle dungeons from Han Shao, but they decided to use up the battle dungeon first. Hao Tian and the others entered the dungeon again. It was still the familiar opening animation, and then they came to the faction selection interface. This time, Pork Bun could not sit still and said, "The escaping mercenaries are too difficult. The other factions should be easier. It's easier to survive being hunted down than running away. There are also reinforcements, so we should be able to survive. Let's try another faction." During the first challenge, Pork Bun had recorded the whole process, and it could be used as material. However, he was most concerned about the scene of the Dragon Emperor showing her power. Even if it was just a cutscene, it would be good. Fighting the dungeon was not his goal, the recording was. His only goal was to wait until the countdown ended and watch the cutscene. The few of them were quite familiar with each other. Seeing that he said so, Mad Blade and Hao Tian agreed. The others did not have any objections. This time, they chose the Dark Star faction. After being tortured the last time, they felt that choosing the Dark Star faction would be more reliable. This time, when they entered the dungeon, they realized that they had become ground troops following a hovering ship. There was still a countdown, but the Dark Star faction only had a 3-hour countdown. The mission was different from the escaping mercenaries. This time, they had to capture a certain number of mercenaries within the time limit. The optional missions were to protect the hovering ship at the beginning and help other Dark Star companions surround the target. The challenge mission was to capture a specific target. The Dark Star faction had a special characteristic. As ground troops, they had to follow the hovering ship and could not leave freely. Otherwise, the dungeon would be judged as a failure, and a battle would be triggered. Now we should be safe. From the role of prey to the role of the hunter, everyone felt a little relieved. They followed the hovering ship and soon found a group of mercenaries. When the order to attack was given, everyone immediately attacked. Then, they discovered a sad fact. Damn, mercenaries would fight back, and they were even more F***king powerful. The hovering ship that everyone had spent so much effort to destroy was easily dismantled into pieces by this group of mercenaries whose levels were all question marked. Then, in order to get rid of the alarm, this group of mercenaries chased after them and killed them. Everyone was in danger and immediately fell from heaven to hell. Their hearts were broken. Who is the hunter here? Why are you running when you can fight so well? The prompt appeared, saying that reinforcements would arrive after 10 minutes. Their group of pursuers had become the ones running away. Both factions had their own dangers. Dark Star had more reinforcements, and mercenaries had stronger individual combat power. No matter which side they chose, they would have to face the advantage of the other side. However, there was an advantage to the Dark Star faction. As long as they ran a distance away, the mercenaries would not dare to follow them. Pork Bun ran away at lightning speed. He decisively betrayed his teammate. The others could only follow behind him and run for their lives. After running for a while and sacrificing 2 lives, the mercenaries finally retreated. The rest of the mercenaries were panting heavily. Bun Hit Dog ran the fastest, and he was in the best condition. He did not have any other strong points, but running fast was his only advantage. I think that since the hovering ship has been destroyed, we should stay here and wait for the dungeon to end. Before he finished speaking, a new order came from everyone's earphones. They were assigned to follow another hovering ship. It was the same as before. If they did not follow the order, they would fail the dungeon. There was no way to steal the chicken. It was impossible to paddle around. Everyone was helpless. Just as they were about to move, a new prompt appeared. Ding dong, the prompt echoed in their ears. The frame of their vision kept flashing with red light. It seemed to be very urgent. A notice: you are within 1 kilometer of the main character. Please carefully decide if you want to change your route. Hao Tian's eyes narrowed. According to the normal route, it is impossible for us to complete the mission. Why don't we try to contact the main character? I guess the main character is also divided into factions. If we can meet someone from the same faction, the difficulty of the dungeon should decrease. If we meet an enemy, it might be a sure kill plot. This is a gamble. He was very experienced. His analysis was clear and logical. Everyone felt that it was quite reasonable. They looked at each other. Let's wait then. The red light flashed more and more rapidly. It meant that the main character was getting closer and closer. It was like a death knell. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. Boom! A faint vibration came from the wall. It was getting louder and louder. It seemed to be getting closer. This sound. Frenzied Sword's eyes suddenly widened as he realized something. He panicked and exclaimed, "Run!" However, it was too late. Boom! The next moment, the rock wall beside them collapsed. The round silver car ball broke through the rock wall and rolled over. They were in the middle of it. All of them were wiped out instantly. In the stronghold, Hao Tian and the others appeared again. They were all stunned. It was as if they had not recovered from being killed in one hit. They could not help but look at Mad Blade. Mad Blade's face was filled with pain. "That's Black Phantom's vehicle. I was sitting in this ball when we escaped together. There is no way we can survive if we meet him. This is our bad luck." Pork Bun's face twitched. He wanted to cry but had no tears. "I just wanted to record some material. Why are you doing this to me?" The players of Black Star began their journey of suffering. They were tortured to death, but they still enjoyed it, feeling pain and happiness at the same time. Pork Bun was the one who suffered the most. He did not have the spirit of a professional player. He was almost in a trance from the torture. However, for the material, he had to force himself to continue suffering. It was very tragic. The dungeon that Han Shao gave out was to keep the players busy for a period of time. The materials he ordered arrived one day later. He locked himself in the machinery modification room, accompanied by Metal and the lathe, and started to build a new generation of combat system. Chapter 394. Fawn Planet 122. An old, small spaceship slowly landed on the devastated, grayish-black land. The airflow from the bottom of the spaceship caused ripples on the ground, and the engine made a buzzing noise. The propulsion system was very simple, and its speed, noise, and shock absorption performance were all very poor. It was a technology that was about to be phased out. In the galactic trade market, only the poor would buy such a simple spaceship. However, this antique spaceship was equipped with top-notch stealth equipment, such as optical invisibility, sound isolation, gravitational wave penetration, quantum network shielding, and so on. A few Dark Star members disguised as travelers walked down from the spaceship and placed a special signal diffuser on the ground. Invisible radio waves passed through the cracks on the planet's surface at an incredible speed and seeped into the ground. They went deeper and deeper into the crevices. In a dark, narrow space, a pair of eyes that had been asleep for a long time suddenly opened. There was a faint light on the back of his hand, and there was a microchip implanted in it. It received the signal and made a slight vibration. The vibration occurred in the blood vessels and bones, waking this person up. "They're finally here." After a while, the spaceship on the surface finally saw the target appear. A man crawled out from a crack in the distance and walked over slowly. It was Ashes. His face was covered in dust, and his cheeks were thin. He was the only survivor of the Sirota fleet. Before the Dragon Emperor arrived, Sirota had issued the order to retreat, but Ashes knew that the enemy was Ames and knew that the mothership was doomed. He took the risk and chose to stay underground. He went deep into a cave and used his Esper ability to form a piece of carbon to wrap himself up. He then controlled his heartbeat and blood flow to enter a state of suspended animation. As expected, his comrades who had boarded the fleet and retreated were all blown up by the mercenary fleet and the Holy Stone Black Crow. They turned into bright fireworks in space and turned into ashes. After the destruction of the Sirota fleet, the mercenaries captured Sirota, the highest commander of the mothership, so they did not have the time to search the entire planet for any survivors. This Dark Star fleet was basically wiped out, so there was no need to waste any more time. Ashes survived. Important officers like him had a positioning chip implanted in them. After everyone left the planet, a rescue spaceship came to pick him up. At that time, Han Shao was also inclined to believe that Ashes had kicked the bucket, but he still had some doubts in his heart. After all, such a legendary character should not die so easily. However, he also did not have the means to search the entire planet. The other mercenaries were rushing to Godora and would not help him. With just his manpower, who knew how long it would take to search the entire planet? There was no need. Furthermore, in terms of probability, it was not worth it. Thus, Han Shao did not investigate, and whether Ashes was dead or alive. Or not. Han Shao. A few Dark Star warriors wanted to help him up, but they were all waved away by Ashes. He did not need anyone to help him up. With a cold expression, he said with a deep voice, "Tell me the current situation. Are Sirota and the others all dead?" Ames shot down Sirota's mothership. We were attacked by the Holy Stone and Black Crow, and the fleet was completely wiped out. Some of the members on the mothership survived, including Sirota. They were all handed over to Ghidorah by the mercenaries. Colton News reported this a few days ago. They were all sent to the Rainbow Prison. Every mothership was a mobile base of Dark Star. Losing any one of them was a heavy loss. Ashes clenched his teeth. What about the secret message bead? We received rumors that the secret message bead was originally picked up by the Dragon Guards and handed over to the Holy Stone civilization. They handed it over to Ghidorah. Ash's body shook, and he said with a deep voice, "In other words, our sacrifice was meaningless. It was all in vain. How can we let such a huge loss go? Even if we can't beat the Dragon Emperor, we have to make her pay the price. She attacked us to save Black Star, so we have to find a chance to get rid of Black Star and let her know that we're not to be messed with." At this moment, a voice that was as heavy as a mountain and sonorous and forceful stopped Ashes from speaking. At such a crucial time, it's not suitable to provoke a strong enemy. Remember, Ghidorah is the real enemy. A virtual image appeared in front of Ember. It was a mixed-blood Ghidorah with pale golden skin. There were some weird scales and wrinkles on his skin, and there was a mysterious pattern on his forehead that extended all the way to his eye bags and nose. It was like the war paint of a barbarian. This person was older, but his eyes were extremely sharp, and his aura was as heavy as a mountain. As soon as he saw him, the anger in Ash's eyes disappeared. He lowered his head and said respectfully, "Teacher?" The few Dark Star members beside him also lowered their heads in fear. "Your Excellency Anner." Anner was the teacher who had unearthed the potential of Ash's Esper ability and taught him. He was a high-level officer of Dark Star and one of the few Grade A combatants in the organization. His position was respected, just below the leader. He looked down at Ashes and said in a deep voice, "I can see that you are angry. Tell me, who made you angry?" "Black Star. He is a mercenary group leader under the Dragon Emperor. I have lost to him twice, no, 3 times. Ever since I started working for the organization, I have only lost to him 3 times. He has humiliated me, and he has a special ability that counters my Esper ability. Only his death can wash away my humiliation." Anner interrupted and coldly said, "Childish and narrow-minded. The organization has invested a huge amount of resources into you and groomed you into a powerful warrior. It's not for you to deal with unimportant people. The organization has high hopes for you, and the responsibility you bear is far beyond your imagination. A small mercenary shouldn't be your target, and it's a waste of time to put your eyes on him." After pausing for a while, he added, "Furthermore, Black Star is a member under the Dragon Emperor. Now is not the time to provoke them. Wait until the big picture is formed, then slowly settle the score." Ashes lowered his head and asked, "What should I do? Anger has affected your rationality. This is an unforgivable mistake. You are not allowed to go out on missions for a year. Stay in the base and focus on training. Reflect on this properly." "Understood." Ashes nodded. He respected Anner very much. He calmed down and accepted such an arrangement. His hostility toward Black Star was suppressed to the bottom of his heart. His teacher was right. He was destined to become the trump card of the organization, and he should not waste his energy on unimportant people. After thinking for a while, Ashes asked one last question. Teacher, what about the secret message bead? Ghidorah has obtained the secret message bead, and they will know what is inside sooner or later. The 7th generation mutation source is in Ghidorah's hands, and there is a risk of the organization's plans being exposed. This matter needs to be discussed at length. In a few days, the leader will hold a meeting to discuss this matter. The future plans will have to be adjusted based on this reason. After getting the answer, Ashes did not delay any longer. He boarded the spaceship and left. Uberly Hub 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. The players did not have much to do in the stronghold and spent most of their time farming dungeons. They tried many battles. Power of the Dragon Emperor, exchanging their experiences and finding a way to clear the stage. First, they had to choose the support team faction. The countdown was the same as the Darkstar faction, 3 hours. Comparing the three, this was the easiest faction. Then, they had to be lucky and meet Goa of the Sky Ring Army in the first 20 minutes. Then, without doing any side missions, they had to follow Goa for 2 hours and leave before meeting the next wave of enemies that could wipe out the players. This way, they would be able to pass 2 hours and 20 minutes. The only difficult part was the last 40 minutes. If everything went smoothly, there should be 6 to 8 players left. By betraying their teammates one by one, there was a chance that one person would be able to clear the stage. This would cause the reward to decrease by 90, but at least they would be able to clear the stage. However, although there was a theoretical method, most of it was based on luck. So far, no one had succeeded. Originally, these professional players thought that if they chose the mercenary faction, they would be able to survive if they met Han Shao. However, they thought too much. No matter which faction they chose, they would definitely die if they met Han Shao. The Darkstar faction was needless to say. If it was the mercenary faction or the support team, after meeting Han Shao, they would be able to survive for a long time. However, they would definitely meet Ashes in the end, and everyone would be killed instantly. Even if they left Han Shao early, they would still meet Ashes. The professional players shifted their focus to the level 60 Germinal Organization dungeons. The level was suitable, and it was much easier. No matter how high the reward of the level 90 dungeon was, they could only see it but not touch it. Pork Bun did not manage to record the Dragon Emperor's material, so he could only do a series from before. He recorded the scenes of the level 60 Germinal Organization dungeon and continued the Black Phantom chapter. Coincidentally, this series had not ended yet. The players had only heard of Han Zhao's deeds but had not seen the actual scenes. Pork Bun's video recorded the progress of the dungeon. The Germinal Organization dungeon was a large-scale team dungeon where Han Shao infiltrated the Germinal Organization headquarters until the Germinal Organization was finally destroyed. It progressed layer by layer, and it was magnificent. Pork Bun originally only wanted to use this episode as a transition, but once the video was released, the response was beyond his expectations. The popularity was actually comparable to the Black Star chapter, which surprised him greatly. Chapter 395. No matter how popular Ames was, she would not be able to shake Han Zhao's position. After all, she was just a new character, and everyone was familiar with Han Shao. His image would not be affected because of this. The Dragon Emperor was beautiful, but Han Shao would be able to give her benefits. What's the use of just looking good? Only a qualified NPC that can help us earn money is one that's above the low-level interests. Furthermore, according to the progress of the 3rd episode of Pork Bun's Black Star chapter, Han Shao and the Dragon Emperor were on the same side. Their combined influence made the players look forward to it even more. Because Pork Bun had edited the Black Star series in the style of a series, Han Shao and the Black Star Mercenary were the first-person perspective, which made the audience feel as if they were a member of the Black Star. Seeing the growth of the faction, they felt happy and empathized with it. This episode was the new episode of the Black Phantom series. It was the end of the Germinal Organization. Han Shao stole information from the Germinal Organization headquarters, ran for thousands of miles, fought countless fierce battles, and received reinforcements from the Six Nations, and fought his last battle in the encirclement. The convoy rushed across the vast yellow desert. The wind blew up sand, and the air was filled with killing intent. The cannon fire was like a steel rainstorm, blowing up desert flowers, and the rumbling of the explosions was like rolling thunder that swept across the land. The scene followed Pork Bun's perspective, and he personally participated in the battle in the dungeon. In order to better reflect the impact, he chose to be on the Germinal Organization's side. He personally saw Han Shao rampaging around, unstoppable. His movements were like lightning. One moment, he killed a few Germinal Organization executives. The next moment, he flashed a few hundred meters away and knocked over a few off-road vehicles. The shockwaves were like knives, scratching their faces painfully. In Pork Bun's scene, Han Shao was like a boss, and the Germinal Organization leader was fighting him head-on. The shockwaves from the collisions were no less loud than the explosions of cannons. Even the air was shaking and the scene was shaking. The shockwaves almost overflowed the scene. It was as if the scene would shatter like a mirror in the next moment. As the two of them fought, they were like a dragon slithering through the entire battlefield. Just the aftershocks alone were enough to send the soldiers and chariots flying. The audience was so nervous that they did not even dare to breathe loudly. Boom! The last thunderous strike shook the scene. The audience was shocked. Their emotions seemed to have drained 1,000 miles away. They finally took a deep breath. The Germinal Organization leader spat out blood and flew backward. He rolled on the sand, leaving a trail of more than 100 meters. He fell to the ground and continued to vomit blood. On the other side, Han Shao stood among the broken pieces of the mechanical suit on the ground. Pork Bun was knocked to the ground by the shockwave just now. Now, his perspective was looking up. The flying dust and sand fell like a yellow curtain being pulled apart. Han Shao stood under the scorching sun, on the yellow sand, in the middle of the cannon fire, with lightning crackling all over his body. At this moment, the level of coolness was maxed out. Even if the Blue Star players knew that Han Shao was very strong, they could not help but feel excited. It was the first time that the players from other planets saw Han Shao's performance. It was the best performance of his career right off the bat. They were shocked. They could not help but tremble in excitement. Wow, this man is so strong. So he's this kind of person. He even had such an experience in the past. Every novice planet had a main character. In comparison, Han Shao was the most eye-catching existence. Many new viewers who were attracted by the Black Star chapter were surprised and interested. They wanted to look for Pork Bun's past videos to learn more about Han Shao. The video continued. The last scene was the nuclear explosion of the Germinal Organization headquarters. The mushroom cloud rose into the sky, its shape unpredictable. The dark red flames and the thick smoke looked like boiling magma from hell. It was earth-shattering. Just as the audience was shocked, the sound of the explosion suddenly disappeared. Only the image of the nuclear explosion was left. At the same time, a man's voice sounded in the background. The dark clouds of war covered the blue sky like the wings of death. At the end of the video, Pork Bun ingeniously added Han Zhao's speech. The image here was the end of the Germinal Organization. The Six Nations dropped a nuclear bomb to end the war. The background was Han Zhao's speech when he built the sanctuary. The image of the nuclear explosion served as a foil to the content of the speech. The Six Nations started the war for their own interests, and the sanctuary aimed to preserve the fire of civilization. The contrast was very strong, and the feeling was different. After the video ended, the audience was not satisfied. It was as if they had watched a short epic. Thinking back to the direction of the Blue Star story, they were filled with emotions. Although Han Shao did not say anything from the beginning to the end, with the speech that Pork Bun added at the end, His acting was off the charts. Some of the audience imagined what he was thinking and interpreted his actions. At the time of the incident, there were already players who did similar things. Now, the topic was hot again. Real men don't talk nonsense. They just do it. Zero is righteous and understands the suffering of the people. That's why he wants to destroy the evil germinal organization. Not bad, not bad. As expected of my husband. The input method of the commenter above is very smart. Black Phantom, Bullsh *T, I just want to elope with my sister. Do you think my nickname of Master Han is just for show? Players from all walks of life discussed with their imaginations. Although this video was rushed, Pork Bun was the production manager, so it attracted a lot of attention. Han Zhao's presence was greatly emphasized, and his influence was subtle. Han Zhao originally gave the players a rich impression, but this video of the end of the germinal organization made the players' impression of him sublimate and become clearer. He had a legendary aura, and his unique charm was slowly taking shape. It was the characteristic and personality that separated him from other characters. He was unique. This was the goal that Han Zhao brought Pork Bun with him. Now, it seemed that he had done a good job. Han Zhao, who was building machinery, took a break to watch the video. He was very satisfied. A few days later, in the machinery modification room, the smell of metal filled the air. The results of the past few days, hundreds of small balls, were neatly stacked on the table. It's finally done. It's faster than I expected. These creations were new machines that he had created by refining low-level machinery blueprints of the same type. Their performance and attributes were significantly improved, and they had many advantages. Before he started building, he had spent 2 to 3 million experience to level up these blueprints to the maximum level. The more he built, the more familiar he was with them, and the faster he could build them. Han Zhao took off his protective suit, counted the number, and separated the different types of mechanical balls. There was a method to using the compressed balls. Normally, mechanics would carry these balls with them in a small bag or make them into accessories such as necklaces, bracelets, earrings, and so on. They could also be tied to the ends of their braids like Ghidorah's investigator, or put these balls into their combat suit. Because the compressed structure was very tight, it was a whole, and there could not be any extra parts. Therefore, it was impossible to make a ball within a ball. Otherwise, it would be an infinite expansion. Only a whole machine or a single part could form a compressed ball. Han Zhao had compressed the mechanical suit. Therefore, in his normal state, he used a black combat belt to store the compressed balls. This belt was originally used to store magazines. With the metal buckle as the center, the belt was split into two, forming an X shape. It was clipped to his waist to increase his carrying capacity. This belt was used to store the more important weapons, and the core machinery like the mechanical suit was made into an accessory. He wore a necklace made of 3 compressed balls, a bracelet on his left and right wrist, and 2 earrings made of small balls. He wore them on his left and right ears. His hair was not short, and it was tied into a braid. At the end of the braid, there were a few compressed balls tied to it. Han Zhao came to the mirror and looked at himself. He was instantly overjoyed. Chapter 396. Han Zhao felt that it was alright. In the face of practicality, he did not care much about appearance. Although being handsome was something that could last forever, he chose to be strong. Other than the belt and accessories, he could also store quite a number of compressed orbs in his clothes. In his normal state, he would look like this. Once he entered a battle, he would summon his mechanical suit. He had added ejection tubes to store and release compressed orbs in the structure of the mechanical suit. As long as the mechanical suit was equipped, a special magnetic link would be able to absorb the compressed orbs on his body. Just like loading bullets, The compressed orbs would enter different parts of the mechanical suit and be ejected at any time. There were hundreds of compressed orbs, and some of them were backup machines. After sorting out the results, Han Xiao pushed open the door and walked out of the machinery modification room. Herluz was waiting at the door. Seeing him come out, he walked forward and said, "Captain, Lurden and the others arrived at Uberly Hub 2 days ago. They're waiting to see you. Lead the way." Han Xiao adjusted his clothes. The two of them left the base, sat on the floating vehicle in the hub hall, and merged into the large group that was shuttling in the air. After a while, they landed in the middle floor of a building at the edge of the hall. This floor was filled with temporary restrooms, and there was a small temporary base that the Sunil mercenaries had rented. The location was remote and the space was narrow, so it was the cheapest restroom. They were as frugal as usual. Ding dong. They pressed the doorbell, and the silver alloy door slid open. The two of them walked in. More than 50 people were squeezed in the narrow room. It was very cramped and crowded. This was half of the total number of people. The other half stayed in the restroom next door and rushed over when they heard the news. Han Xiao saw that it was really too crowded, so he asked everyone to go to the public rooftop outside to talk. The public rooftop also functioned as a parking area for flying vehicles. It was like a mini-port, and behind it was the city-like hub hall. There were many tall buildings, and flying vehicles were flying in the sky, taking off and landing on each floor. The wind blew past the rooftop, messing up one's hair and bringing a hint of heat. The wind blown by the vehicles was hot. "Black Star. Captain." The Sunil mercenaries nodded and greeted him. Lurden was chosen as the representative to express their gratitude. Han Xiao sized up this group of people. Most of the Sunil mercenaries were disabled and had put on mechanical prosthetic. He had seen the mercenaries' resumes before, and more than half of them were Grade C supers, with a small portion being Grade D supers. Logically speaking, Grade D supers were not suitable to be mercenaries, as it was too dangerous. However, Sunil was in a difficult situation, and no matter how small a mosquito was, it was still meat. He could only let the stronger mercenaries lead the weaker members. "How about this? I'll choose a mission that suits you, and you can decide if you want to accept it or not. Since you've joined me, you have to listen to my orders. I'll say the ugly words first. You can object to my orders, and we can discuss it, but if you disobey my orders behind my back, I'll immediately terminate the cooperation. Of course, I don't want such a situation to happen. I understand your difficult situation. After all, I've been hired by the Sunil catastrophe before, so you don't have to worry that I'll force you to do missions that you can't complete." Since he was the leader of the faction, he had to ensure that he was the absolute leader. Although the Sunil mercenaries were talents to him, Han Xiao would not completely give in to them because of that. The Sunil mercenaries nodded and had no objections. In their eyes, Han Xiao being willing to let them share his influence was already helping them in their hour of need. Han Xiao opened the mercenary interface, selected a few missions, and let everyone choose. These missions were not public missions that the Alliance had given out to everyone but private requests from other partners. The benefits were very good. The difference was that when normal mercenaries applied for missions, they were the ones being selected. However, these private missions that Han Xiao had received were people coming to him and inviting him to work together. The two were fundamentally different. This was the benefit of the Black Star mercenaries' fame. The partners were all large mercenary groups and did not necessarily need help. However, they were willing to share the benefits in order to build a good relationship with him, mainly because of his identity as Floating Dragon. Most of the Sunil mercenaries worked alone, risking their lives for a meager reward. They had never seen a mission with such good rewards and safety. They were overjoyed. Although they only had a few choices, they still fell into a dilemma. After discussing for a while, They chose to accept the cooperation request from the Sky Ring Army and escort a resource exploration team to the North Garten star system to develop an uninhabited planet. While everyone was choosing, Han Shao did not say anything. He leaned against the transparent glass railing of the rooftop and played with a compressed orb with his head down. After they finished choosing, he said, "Although this mission is quite simple, I need to test your combat strength first, just in case. Let's go to the combat simulation room." The Sunil mercenaries felt helpless and felt that it was unnecessary, but they could only follow their captain's orders. The group set off and went to the combat simulation room. Han Shao rented a large room. After walking in, he stood in front of everyone, facing them. The Sunil mercenaries looked at each other. Lurden coughed, stepped forward and said, "Then I'll be the first to test." "No need. You guys come together to save time." Han Shao curled his finger. Everyone was shocked. "We have more than 100 people here. Even if you're a grade B super, you're too arrogant to ask us to attack together." Anger rose from the bottom of their hearts. They felt that they were being underestimated. "Although they were here to rely on you, you'll regret it if you underestimate us." With anger on their faces, the Sunil mercenaries spread out, took out their weapons, and got ready for battle. The team of more than 100 people bent slightly and got ready to charge. The aura they gathered was like a lion that was about to pounce on its prey, and there was only Han Shao on the other side. Only when they were valued would they receive better treatment. Everyone decided to go all out and show their full strength. "Since you want to be beaten up, we'll let you have a good time." Herluz activated the simulation room. The white room turned into a flat gray rock surface. It was very vast. He looked at the warriors of his race who were ready for battle and shook his head. In the past few days, he had been called by Han Shao occasionally to test the power of his weapons. He had a deep understanding of Han Zhao's combat ability. At this time, he only hoped that these people of his race would not be beaten too badly. Han Shao moved his shoulders and touched the compressed orbs in his belt. At this moment, he suddenly felt like time had reversed. It was as if he had returned to the past, when he first used the mechanic class to shine, beating up all the little kids in the arena. From then on, he had walked the path of being a booster player, never to return. At this time, he was not only testing the Sunil mercenaries but also testing his own combat ability and establishing his authority. The Sunil mercenaries had joined for his influence, and did not think much of his strength. Now, most of the mercenaries looked at the Black Star mercenary this way. Many of them were jealous and felt that Black Star was purely lucky to have the Dragon Emperor. Otherwise, it would have been a third-rate team. They would have done the same. This was the drawback of becoming famous quickly. It made people doubt his strength. Han Shao had known this for a long time. However, after weighing the pros and cons, it was definitely more profitable to borrow the power of others. It was normal for there to be some side effects. Mercenaries had always respected the strong. He was doing this to convince this group of people and establish his authority. The corners of his mouth curled up, showing a hint of fighting spirit. "Come." Bang bang bunga. As soon as he said that, the Sunil mercenaries immediately moved and charged forward. The long-range soldiers shot cannons and lasers, closing in quickly. Han Shao stood still, and a flash of lightning flashed on his body. The two compressed orbs that were acting as earrings flew into the air and quickly turned into two sets of floating shuttles, forming two blue-purple shields above his head and in front of his body. All the long-range attacks exploded on the thin energy shield, and the mirror-like shield rippled with energy. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The sound of electric current continued. Immediately after, compressed orbs flew out of his belt one after another, floating around him. The lightning-like magnetic energy was directly activated, and these compressed orbs were scattered by the magnetic force. They were as fast as bullets, dragging long and thin lightning trails behind them. With a clang, they hit the ground and spread out. This scene was like a fairy scattering flowers, and soldiers formed from beans. Instantly spread out. The next second, 22 ground turrets and 14 floating turrets appeared on the field, firing at the hundreds of enemies in unison. Tut 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 tut, the flames at the muzzles were more than a meter long. Some of them were large caliber cannon turrets that used special ammunition, and some were electromagnetic cannon turrets. The firepower of 36 cannon turrets covered no blind spot. The formation of the Sunil mercenaries was instantly messed up. Their speed decreased, and they had difficulty dodging the rain of bullets. The turrets were located beside or behind Han Shao, and the surrounding area of 100 meters was filled with mechanical traps that restricted movement and prevented the enemy from advancing. Each trap was 1 to 2 meters in size, and the trigger range was larger than the size of the trap. They flickered with dangerous electricity and sparks, making people not want to try stepping on them. In the twinkling of an eye, a position spread out around him. The Sunil mercenaries immediately found it difficult to move forward. They were surrounded by danger, and they instantly fell into a passive position. Chapter 397. After obtaining the compression technology, the depth and breadth of the mechanic class's combat power had increased at the same time. They had the ability to instantly take the initiative or turn the situation around. The speed of setting up the battlefield had a huge impact on the final outcome of the battle. In the version after the rise of the mechanic class, the other supers would basically rush forward and stop the mechanic from setting up the battlefield. If the mechanic class was allowed to set up the weapons, the situation would be irreversible, and they would slide into the abyss of failure. Of course, this was the normal situation. Some special abilities or items would not be considered for the time being. From the perspective of the battle rhythm, the mechanic class naturally had the rhythm, forcing the enemy to have no choice but to deal with it. This was a huge advantage. Furthermore, even if the rhythm of the mechanic class was temporarily broken and he had no time to set up the battlefield, he could not let his guard down. If the mechanic class took a breather and set up the battlefield, the situation would be reversed, and all his previous efforts would be wasted. Han Zhao's mechanic class had just taken shape, and he already had such a troublesome ability. He was very experienced, so the speed of setting up the battlefield could not be slow. At this time, the battlefield was filled with cannon fire, and the Sunil mercenaries fell one after another. This was a spar. After the Sunil mercenaries fell, Herluz, who was waiting at the side, dragged them out of the battlefield. He had been busy since the start of the battle and had not stopped at all. A pugilist mercenary suddenly jumped up and drew a parabola in the air, trying to avoid the traps all over the ground and jump to Han Zhao's side. At this time, a metal trap that he had jumped over was suddenly triggered. A bouncing mine shot into the air and exploded with a bang, exploding with a net-like blue electric current. Taking a closer look, this was a capture trap made of thin metal rope. It was connected to a high voltage, and it covered the pugilist mercenary in midair. Buzz! The man let out a blood-curdling scream as he was instantly electrocuted and charred black. He fell into another repulsive trap, and an invisible force sprayed towards the cone-shaped area above him. The man bounced up again with his head down. A few turrets turned towards him and focused their fire. The continuous barrage of bullets was like an elongated stick, pushing him out. With a bang, he fell until he was dizzy and directly fainted. This scene instantly dispelled the other mercenaries' thoughts of jumping up. "You want to jump over? Not so easy." Han Shao smiled. There were mines in the trap, and there were also bouncing traps that could detect objects in the air to prevent them from advancing in the air. Within the range of his mechanical force, the machinery would receive his own bonuses. Some of the cannons were placed beside him, and their power was increased by several times. Whoever charged at the front would receive the most intense firepower. Faced with such a situation, The mercenaries spread out and charged from different directions to disperse the firepower of the cannons. Lurden was covered in a green shield. He was blinking under the rain of bullets, but he still ran forward. In other directions, there were many mercenaries equipped with shield generators. Colorful light balls passed through the cannon fodder and traps and approached quickly. Han Shao curled his finger, and another wave of compressed orbs flew out and landed beside him. They expanded and turned into more than 20 beast-shaped robots. They were about the size of a medium-sized dog, completely black and covered in armor. However, they had the streamlined body of a cheetah, like an armored black panther. There was a vertical opening on each of their shoulders, revealing 3 gun barrels arranged side by side. They were equipped with machine guns inside, and they had segmented scorpion-like tails that were very agile. At the end of the tails was a sharp alloy blade that flashed with electricity. Han Shao had prepared a total of 3 combos. The first was the multiple turrets fire coverage style, which did not require any technical skills. All he had to do was shoot. The second was the trap style, which required some control. It mainly depended on whether the area of the trap could protect himself and restrict the enemy's movement. The third was the hound style. The hound style was to control a group of small mechanical beasts to harass, and kill the enemy like hounds. The reason it was called this was because the basic machine that formed this style was called a mechanical hound. This kind of blueprint was relatively easy to obtain, and Han Shao was using an enhanced version of the mechanical beast. Black Panther Combat Mechanical Beast was a new blueprint that he had created by combining the blueprints of many low-level mechanical beasts. A Black Panther had 2,700 armor points, while the basic mechanical hound only had 1,500. Its attack was also about 70 points higher, and it had more functions. Its performance was also stronger, and it had an essential self-destruct function. Go! Han Shao pursed his lips, and more than 20 mechanical Black Panthers dashed out. They were very fast, and the gun barrels on their shoulders opened fire. They moved between the gaps of the traps and attacked from the side of the enemy. This was the weakest spot of the enemy's defense, and it immediately slowed down the group's pace. Once the mercenaries got close to the mechanical Black Panthers, the Black Panthers would immediately jump away and keep their distance. They would only get close to the enemy when they were ambushing. Sometimes, 3 or 4 mechanical Black Panthers would form a team and attract the enemy's attention from different directions. Then, a mechanical Black Panther would ambush them from the back. It would jump up, and its tail would slash horizontally, leaving behind a cold glint. The mechanical Black Panthers were equipped with smart chips, and 4 of them formed a group. They could only be used as a unit for simple tactical coordination. Han Zhao's chip manufacturing skills were still at the basic level, so the mechanical Black Panther's combat ability was not independent enough. The commands they could recognize were limited, and they could only be used to harass. Turrets, traps, and mechanical beasts, these 3 axes were used, and the Sunil mercenaries felt like they were wading through mud. Han Shao observed the effects and nodded. This system is not afraid of being ganged up on, and it can beat up supers weaker than me. If it's against people of the same level, it can also be used to harass and drain their health. But the damage will be very high. Bang! Just as he was thinking, a mechanical Black Panther was blown away and smashed into a turret, tilting the barrel. In the blink of an eye, someone finally passed through the blockade. Lurden was surrounded by green light, and he finally got to his side. With a low roar, the green light in his hand turned into a knight's light spear, and he suddenly stabbed forward. Clatter, in the blink of an eye, the compressed orbs on his necklace expanded, and a white mechanical suit covered his body instantly. The light spear stabbed his chest, but it could not pierce through this white mechanical suit. Han Shao did not say anything and slapped him. Bang! Lurden was slapped to the ground face first, and his face hit the ground with a loud thud. He could not fight back at all. Everyone's expression changed. They saw that Han Zhao's appearance had changed. He was wearing a white combat suit. The texture of the armor was like bone, but it was unbelievably tough. It looked more like a knight's armor made of bone. The armor was beautifully designed, and the shoulders were carved into the shape of a dragon's head. The chest armor was connected to the abdomen, and it could support more agile movement. The people present did not know if they were hallucinating, but this mechanical suit seemed to be giving off an inexplicable aura, making them feel mysterious. Void Dragon Single Soldier Mechanical Suit. Compared to snake-type mechanical suits, such as Viper and Amphiptera, this dragon mechanical suit was stronger. It was not that the technology was more advanced, but that the materials used were rare. It was made from the void dragon bones obtained from floating Dragon Island. It was light and tough, and it contained special energy. This mechanical suit did not have so many mechanical weapons, and it was specifically used for melee combat. Its armor value was a terrifying 30,000 points. If energy is used as fuel, energy consumption, 30/S energy recovery, 55/S standby mode consumption, 25 energy/min battle mode consumption, 48 energy/min core power output, 775/1 200 skeleton module, TM 150 nano biochemical tendons. Mechanical suits inner lining. Provides elasticity with movement. Increases damage output and physical performance. Plus 57 STR, plus 45 dec. Power output, 150. Energy can be used to stimulate the tendons. Energy consumption, 40 energy per minute. Plus 33 overall attributes armor module. Void Dragon Skeleton, pink rare material. Plus 28,000 armor, plus 320 defense palm module. Vibration converter, purple. Generates vibration damage. 11% of melee damage is armor piercing. Power output, 50 wrist module, wrist strength enhancement ring. Plus 10 STR, power output. 30 leg module, internal booster injection circuit. Plus 8 DX, power output. 30 propulsion module. Small maneuvering equipment, purple, X12. Power output, 240 survival module. Vital signs monitoring, temperature maintenance system, oxygen filtration, gravity stabilizer, emergency injection device, high pressure resistance device. Power output, 150 chip module. Damage detection, analysis database, trajectory prediction, remote control, combat assistance, neuron signal conversion. Power output, 110 accessory module. Electromagnetic pulse controller, purple. Gains excited status. Plus 7 all attribute. Lasts for 15 minutes. Energy consumption. 5 power output. 15 accessory module. Compressed orb storage and ejection pipe accessory ability. Powerful performance, in battle mode, more energy is allocated to the biochemical tendons to generate more power. Plus 45 STR, plus 35 DEX side effect. This equipment is buffed by the power of the void. After equipping, max HP will be reduced by 3000. Chapter 398. The equipment restriction is quite high. Normally, when a mechanic reaches LV90, it will be very difficult for their endurance to reach 200 points. Even if they have 200 points of endurance, they will only have 8000 HP. After wearing it, I will lose 3000 HP, which is almost half of my total HP. I'm most afraid of psychic attacks. They can penetrate my armor, but that's only 1/5 of my HP. Han Xiao nodded in his mind. The Void Dragon was the strongest combat suit that he could create at the moment. He had used up all the materials and could not replicate it. Be it in terms of tankiness or damage output, it was insanely strong. The two core skills were indestructible durability and Void Jet. The former increased resistance and had the ability to self-repair, while the latter had terrifying explosive power. It came from the magic accumulated in the bones of the Void Dragon. Although Han Shao was a mechanic, due to the special properties of the materials, the Void Dragon he created could be considered half magic and half machine equipment. If he wanted to make the self-repair effect through mechanical means, there were many possibilities. For example, nano-repair robots, which required the high-end knowledge of the energy branch and nanopower, or alloys with memory characteristics, which required the equipment branch high-end material technology. By the way, speaking of magic, Han Zhao's eyes sparkled. He called the three Volga brothers over. The three of them looked like they were made from the same mold, and it was difficult to recognize them. Usually, the boss would speak on behalf of the three of them. "Captain, why are you looking for us? What kind of magic do you know?" Han Shao looked at the boss of the Volga brothers. "I'm a mage, proficient in water spells," the boss of the Volga brothers introduced. The eldest Volga brother introduced. The second brother is good at evocation spells and buffing auras, while the third brother is a psychic. Actually, when we were young, the three of us went to the Mage Advanced Study Academy together, but only the third brother was rejected. I still remember the recruitment tutor telling him, "Give up magic, your talent is not suitable for this school. To you, magic is as high as Mount Verisal. Do you know Mount Verisal? That's the highest mountain in our hometown." Boss was a chatterbox, and he could not stop talking. He changed the topic in an instant. Han Shao was stunned for 2 seconds, and the topic had already changed to how their first pet died in their childhood. "Stop!" Han Shao hurriedly stopped the boss of the Volga brothers, coughed and said, "I called you guys over to add magic to the weapon." As he spoke, he pointed at the machine on the table. The three of them had no objections to the captain's request. However, when they looked around, their expressions immediately turned bitter. With so many machines, the workload was simply too great. "I've written down the specific requirements on a piece of paper. It's on the table. You guys can take your time when you don't have any missions." Han Shao waved his hand and strode away, leaving the three of them looking at each other. The third Volga brother was in high spirit. He was not a sorcerer, so it was none of his business. He glanced at his two brothers gloatingly and left proudly. The other two looked at his swaggering back and only wanted to reward him with a magic light bomb. In theory, enchantments could be applied to most inanimate objects. Naturally, it could be applied to machines as well. Enchantment was also one of the life professions that mage players came with. In my previous life, most mages had part-time jobs in the enchantment profession to earn extra money. Water enchantments increased physical damage reduction, while evoking professions generally gave extra attack power. Han Shao had temporarily reached his limit by using machines to strengthen his weapons. He was looking for a new way to strengthen them. Since there were mages in the team, he would try to make use of them. "I'm currently level 95, 5 levels away from the level 100 promotion requirement. However, my mechanic main class is stuck at the class advancement requirement, and I'm required to learn 2 high-end knowledges. Sigh, I haven't even learned all the class advancement knowledges yet." Shaking his head, Han Shao felt a little helpless. His main class had reached the 5th stage, which was level 65. When the players had a main class at this level, it would already be in version 20. The next class advancement would only be completed in version 30, and only then would they be able to come into contact with high-end knowledges. Even in version 30, the cost of learning high-end knowledges was extremely high. They basically had to be exchanged from the faction store, and the players had to work very hard to accumulate enough favorability and money. The class advancement requirement that he had randomly obtained this time was not easy. Just the class advancement knowledges alone had taken him so much effort, and high-end knowledges were even harder to obtain. There was only one high-end knowledges for sale in the Garten Star Systems regional exchange, and it was one of the more marginal ones. Even so, the price was tens of times higher than the class advancement knowledges. He had more than 100,000 anas, but he still could not afford it. There were two difficulties with this class advancement requirement. The first was money, and the second was the channel. The former required time to earn money, and the latter required time to slowly find sellers in the various star systems in the shattered star ring. Very few mechanics were willing to share their knowledge, so Han Xiao felt that he would not be able to complete the class advancement in a short time, even with his identity as Floating Dragon. There's a class advancement requirement at level 100, so I might as well find a new subclass and raise it to level 100. I'll take a look at the class advancement requirement first. If it's convenient, I can complete it together with the class advancement requirement. Han Xiao pondered. The secret message bead triggered 3 large missions for me, all related to Godora and Darkstar. I'll have to plan slowly and not act rashly before the next version. No, including the hidden mission on Erosia, it should be 4 high-difficulty missions. Erosia was very mysterious. She had awakened the energy Esper ability, and she seemed to be curious about Esper abilities. Han Xiao told Erosia to train her energy, and sometimes he would teach her personally. He realized that Erosia was very talented, and her body contained extraordinary potential. It was like a dormant treasure, and her Esper ability absorbed nutrients from it and grew very quickly. Han Xiao estimated that in less than a month she would officially reach grade. He opened the forums and browsed through the players' posts as usual. He saw that among the Black Star mercenary players, someone had posted the process and difficulty of the level 90 dungeon. This was the first time that all the players had seen a dungeon that exceeded the level limit of the version, and it caused a lot of discussion. Han Xiao only knew the situation of the new dungeon after reading it once. He calculated in his mind. With his experience, level 60 players should have a chance to succeed and complete the dungeon with a very low success rate. Pork Bun posted a new video again? He realized that Pork Bun's new video was the 4th episode of the Black Star story. Han Xiao was surprised. He opened the video and roughly watched it. This episode continued the content of the previous episode, showing the second half of this mercenary incident. From Floating Dragon Island to Darkstar's pursuit, and then to the Dragon Emperor's power. Pork Bun still could not complete Battle, Power of the Dragon Emperor. He had already given up and had drawn this scene himself. Therefore, what the audience saw was a children's sketch. The colorful hand-drawn kindergarten drawings, coupled with Pork Bun's eloquent description, felt like a salesman holding a salted fish and insisting that it was an imperial sword. The Darkstar mothership saw that they were not friendly, so it screamed and fled in a hurry. Ames stared and yelled, "Hey! Don't you dare run!" Then, she activated her Esper ability and used Mount Tai Crush. She grabbed the Floating Dragon Island beside her and threw it at the Darkstar mothership. All of a sudden, the sky changed color and the two collided. It was like a rock hitting an egg. The mothership fell to the ground like a kite with a broken string. Pork Bun's tone was as if he was on steroids. His tone was even more excited than a salesman, as if he was narrating the battle of the century. However, the scene was extremely simple. A black matchstick man threw out a golden sphere with a dotted line behind it, which represented the trajectory of the sphere. It hit the black sphere that represented the Darkstar mothership, and then there was an onomatopoeic word bang. Beside it, the words were still red and bold. This person is AF * King Genius. I really picked up a ghost. Han Zhao's mouth twitched. As he expected, the density of the comments in this section could be said to be crazy. The audience's desire to complain was maxed out. Luckily, other than this, the scene changed back to a recording. When everyone returned to Ubarely Hub, the incident came to an end. What the players saw was only the surface of the matter. They were all kept in the dark about the conspiracy behind Darkstar. Only Han Xiao knew. Other than focusing on the scene of the Dragon Emperor showing her power, Pork Bun's other focus was on the new Black Star mercenary officer, or more accurately, Aroshia. In front of her, the three Volga brothers were completely transparent. After Ames attracted a lot of attention, Aroshia caused another craze. Her looks were even better than Ames, almost perfect. Although she did not have Ames' strength, status, temperament, and so on, she had her own charm. The fact that she had lost her memory made her very lovable and mysterious. Most importantly, she had breasts, and they were very big. As expected, the flat-chested party and the party with the flat chest reignited again. How could one conquer the world with a flat chest? How could one gather people with a flat chest? Although the Dragon Emperor is strong, beautiful, and has long legs, she's flat. White covers all ugliness, flat destroys everything. Sorry, I've fallen in love with someone else. Not that I want to criticize you guys, but you're really bad. You're all brainless. What's so good about being big? Big is beautiful. These screen-licking monsters split into the Ames party and the Aroshia party, and they were having a great time arguing with each other. Han Shao was happy to see this. The more intense the argument was, the more popular the topic would be. After all, no matter how they argued, it would not affect him, a male human. After closing the forum, Han Shao started to think about his next plan of action. This time, I've been through a lot of trouble and gotten involved in a higher-level battle. I've caught the attention of Darkstar. It's best to keep a low profile for a while and accept missions to strengthen my current position. It's also a good time to save money. This time, in order to compress the technology, he had gone through a lot of danger. Han Shao was not prepared to take any more risks for the time being. He had fame, ability, and connections. His collaborators had provided him with many good missions. He decided to complete these missions one by one and accumulate them step by step. There was no need to rush. Furthermore, he was connected to the players. It was only version 10, and the players' abilities were limited. When the players grew in the next version, the benefits he received from the players would increase exponentially. Returning to the Stronghold Hall, all the players were there. When they saw Han Shao appear, they all surrounded him. Black Star, when are we going out for the next mission? Mad Blade asked. This group of players had been doing dungeons every day. They were almost bored from staying in the stronghold. They could not wait any longer. Pack up. We're leaving today. On the way, Han Shao had accepted an employment invitation from his collaborators. It was not difficult and the pay was good. Before the next version arrived, he was only prepared to accept such missions to accumulate wealth, strengthen his position, and develop in a low-profile manner. After such a huge incident, he had to maintain his health. Hearing this, the players were energized. They quickly picked up their things. More than 50 armored warriors stood in front of him in an orderly manner. Han Shao glanced at them, turned around, and walked out with large strides. The players followed closely behind him. Let's go. Han Shao had decided on his course of action. He accepted the employment invitation from his collaborators and was active in the various star systems of the Shattered Star Ring. After the popularity of Floating Dragon Island died down, the status and reputation of the mercenary group gradually built up through the missions. The Black Star mercenary ran around, busy with one mission after another. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, 9 months had passed. Chapter 399. Planet Dawn, Ancient City Ruins in the Southern Territory. The allied forces of various tribes were gathered there. The 3,000 Blue Shield Knights of the Vane Kingdom, 5,000 barbarian berserkers of the Howling Barbarian Tribe, 1,000 alchemy bombardiers of the Earth Tribe, 500 orcs of the Children of Listen, and the miscellaneous armies of the southern city-states and dukedoms. A total of 15,000 people were stationed in the green field outside the ancient city ruins. All kinds of flags fluttered in the cold south wind. There were no clouds in the sky. The sky here had the color of dusk, dyeing everything dark. The sun hanging high in the sky seemed very small and very far away from this planet. In the commander's meeting tent, the commanders of various armies gathered there and had an intense discussion. Only a tall man with light blue skin did not say a word. He was the leader of the Blue Shield Knights, Rex, the war hero of the Vane Kingdom. He went from a commoner to the commander of the trump-card army of the biggest kingdom on planet Dawn. His deeds were praised by the people of planet Dawn. When everyone was almost done talking, Rex spoke with a deep voice. The commanders of the other tribes present respected him very much. They stopped arguing and listened to him speak. Rizar and his disciples are hiding under the ruins right now. They are preparing for the ritual to pollute the water. We still have about 6 hours, about 2.5 hours. In the ruins, there are about 800 high-level magic puppets that he spent 20 years to create. He has set up a complicated sealing magic circle. Only when all the magic puppets are destroyed will the passage to the ritual altar open. This means that we have to break through the magic puppet's seal in a short amount of time, find their location, and stop the ritual. Otherwise, more than half of the Southern Territory's water source will lose its vitality, and hundreds of thousands of people will die because of this. Moreover, Rizar's church also has 100 polluters that can corrode our weapons and bodies. Even the most elite warriors can't withstand the corrosive spell. The situation is too difficult. It's very difficult for our 15,000 people to rush in a short period of time. Rizar has been secretly preparing for 20 years. If we had discovered his scheme 10 days earlier, oh no, even 3 days earlier, we wouldn't be so passive. Now we can only urgently gather the few of us, a commander said with a sigh. Rex said with a deep voice, "This concerns the purity of the water source and the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. We cannot fail. The Nation Protector mages have contacted the Ascenders from the higher world, and the Ascenders have hired warriors from the higher world to help us fight." After saying that, Rex looked at the corner of the tent. A human wearing a red technological combat suit was sitting there. He looked completely different from the group of people wearing armor. Hearing this, he stood up and said, "I'm the leader of the Red Horn mercenary group, Lingo. Your race has paid us. We will try our best to help you." Rex asked, "Leader Ringo, are you confident?" Ringo shook his head and smiled bitterly. "To be honest, the situation here is much worse than what we were told when we accepted the mission. Our strength is limited, and we can't handle a mission of this level. The specific situation has been reported to the employer. The second batch of reinforcements is on their way. If they are fast, they should be able to arrive in 2 hours." Rex's face darkened and he frowned slightly. "Time is too tight. Are the reinforcements reliable?" "Don't worry. The second batch of reinforcements is much stronger than us. As long as they can arrive in time, solving the accident here will be a piece of cake. Their stronghold is in this star system. If not for this reason, they would not even bother to take action for small incidents like this." "I hope so." Rex was very worried, but Ringo was very confident. Planet Dawn was located in the Garten star system, under Ghidorah's jurisdiction. This planet was very far away from the star. Even during the day it was like dusk, hence the name. There was no moon at night, only darkness. There was no difference between seasons. Every day was very cold. Logically speaking, this should be a frozen planet that could not give birth to normal life. Life came from the rivers on the surface and underground. The natural water of planet Dawn contained magic energy and had the characteristics of warmth. It dissolved the coldness of the entire planet and gave birth to plants and creatures. It was also called Origin Water by the races on planet Dawn. Origin water was the most important resource on the entire planet. The civilization of planet Dawn was built on Origin water. The changes and wars of the countries in history were basically all centered around Origin water. Creatures drank Origin water for a long time, and their bodies were very strong. The light blue-skinned Vanians were the main race. The ancient Vanian kingdom was the most powerful country on this planet. The existence of Origin Water determined that Planet Dawn was a magic-based civilization. The development of technology was slow, stable, and focused on the individual. The social structure had very obvious characteristics of a magic-based civilization. For example, people who could control magic at will had a higher social status. Although this was a surface civilization, because it was also a magic-based civilization like Godora, they were very similar and had a certain connection with the galaxy. Once a strong person reached a certain level of power, they could apply for Godora's help and enter the higher world, which was the galaxy. This kind of powerhouse was known as an ascender. Throughout history, there had been hundreds of ascenders. Some of them had disappeared completely, while others would occasionally return and leave behind a communicator. This was also a holy object, guarded by the protector mages, used to contact the ascenders. Not long ago, the Vanian kingdom discovered the conspiracy of the infamous pollution mage Rizar. He wanted to use some kind of large-scale magic ritual to absorb more than half of the Origin Water in the Southern Territory so that he could obtain an unparalleled amount of magic power. Originally, the magic power of Origin Water would not dissipate for a long time. Even if it was consumed, it would recover in a natural cycle. However, this ritual would take away all the magic power of the Origin Water in an area, and the Origin Water that had lost all its magic power would need at least a few hundred years to slowly recover. The magic power of the Origin Water on the entire planet would be diluted because of this, causing the temperature of the planet to drop. Even if the Origin Water could circulate, it would still take time. If this area lost its support, it would be covered in frost within a month and become a land of death, causing hundreds of thousands of people to lose their homes or even die. In the ancient era, 1,000 years ago, someone had carried out the same ritual. This was the cause of the extreme northern wasteland on Planet Dawn. It had not completely thawed yet. At that time, all the tribes worked together and killed the culprit after a fierce battle. They also destroyed the knowledge of this ritual. However, 1,000 years later, this ritual appeared again. Therefore, the Vanian kingdom urgently gathered troops, contacted other countries, and formed an alliance army. They went straight to the place where Rizar was holding the ritual to prevent the same thing from happening to Planet Dawn. Furthermore, the soil in the south was very fertile. If this place was also frozen, the food production would be greatly reduced, and thousands of people would starve to death in the future. Lin Ji's Red Horn mercenary group accepted the job of the Ascenders from Planet Dawn and came here to solve the problem a few days ago. However, the number of magic puppets exceeded their expectations, so they had no choice but to ask for external help. To their surprise, an unexpectedly strong mercenary group was willing to help. This mercenary group was well known in the industry and had a strong background. People like the Red Horn mercenary group usually did not have the chance to interact with such a big shot. Lin Gu was relieved. With them around, this mission would be a success. Time was of the essence. Rex did not waste any more time. He gave the order, and the alliance army of all tribes set off. Rumble! The sounds of footsteps and beast hooves converged into a rolling torrent. The black mass of troops moved, rapidly approaching the ancient city ruins. From afar, one could see the dense dark green magic colossuses in the ruins. They had 4 arms, each holding a giant axe, and shone with a magical luster. Their texture was like stone, but also like metal. Just looking at them would make one feel that they were unshakable. Blue Shield Knight Legion, charge! Rex pulled down his visor and clamped his legs together. The knight's mount was a creature called the Stampede Beast. It had a snake neck and a horse body. Its 4 legs were bent backward. It roared and charged out. 3,000 Blue Shield Knights followed closely behind. Facing the magic colossuses that were 3 times taller than them, every knight's eyes were filled with fearlessness. The magic colossuses were controlled by someone. They quickly formed a formation and clashed with the charging knights. Bang! 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 People fell and beasts tumbled. Sparks flew everywhere, and the scene instantly became chaotic. The other tribes also joined the battle. Swords and claws clanged against the magic colossuses. The roars were even louder than alchemy bombs. The berserkers and knights were at the front. The warriors' bones were broken by the magic colossuses, and they screamed in pain. The enemies, polluters, hid behind the colossuses and released corrosive spells on the warriors. Only by destroying all the magic colossuses could the sealing magic circle be opened. Using human lives to fight against the magic colossuses often cost 13 to 18 elite warriors to destroy one magic colossus. Even with the help of the Red Horn mercenary team's firearms and abilities, the speed of killing the magic colossuses was not fast enough. The number of magic colossuses was more than the 800 they had expected. It was like a wall of despair. Red gradually spread across the green plains. The dusk sky witnessed this bloody battle. Continue charging, don't stop. The Knight Legion led by Rex had already lost a quarter of its members, but they had also killed the most magic colossuses. With a determined expression, he circled out of the battlefield and charged back again. A spear pierced the leg of a magic colossus. The tip of the spear that contained the explosive enchantment exploded, shattering a small part of the magic colossus body. A magic colossus could flatten an army of hundreds of normal people. The Blue Shield Knight Legion was the elite army of the Vane Kingdom. Every knight was a warrior with magic power, and their strength was far beyond normal people. Such a heavy loss was already a huge blow to their vitality. At the same time, in a man-made space under the ancient city ruins, there was a huge altar with a strange shape. Countless believers in black were praying softly, injecting magic power into the magic circle of the altar. In the middle of the altar was an old Vanian wearing a bright red robe. This person was Rizar. A mirror with a golden frame was floating beside him. He had cast clairvoyance on it, and the mirror displayed the battle above him from a bird's-eye view. These idiots, they fell for your trick as expected. Those magic colossuses are specifically used to exhaust them. Our magic circle is hidden under the plains, and fresh blood is directed here. Only with enough fresh blood as fuel can we start the ritual. You tied the sealing magic circle to the magic colossuses. What a brilliant idea, forcing them to fight the magic colossuses head-on. A high-ranking believer said flatteringly below the altar. Rizar nodded and asked calmly, "How much fresh blood do we need?" "Another hour, and we will have enough fuel to start the altar. You will become the master of magic power, the strongest mage in history." The high-ranking believer had a fanatical look on his face. "The strongest, Rizar looked at him with a pitiful expression, shook his head, and muttered to himself, 20 years of preparation, I'm finally going to succeed. I've been stuck at this level for so many years. This is the limit of my talent. As long as I cross this step, I will be able to go to the higher world." The battle on the ground lasted for almost an hour. In order to save time, the army almost gave up on defense. Under their crazy attacks, half of the magic colossuses were destroyed, and all the enemy corruptors were killed. However, the warriors also suffered heavy casualties. Blood flowed like a river, and the remaining people were exhausted. The battle losses were soaring at an alarming rate. "Hang in there. At this rate, we can stop the ritual in time." Rex roared loudly to boost the morale. This time, he felt a chill above his head. A magic colossus got close to him and chopped down with its giant axe. Boom! Rex hurriedly jumped out. The running beast was split in half by the axe, and the blade of the axe was embedded in the ground. The running beast's blood and organs flowed all over the ground. If he did not dodge, he would have ended up like this. Before he had time to be scared, this colossus walked over with its axe raised. Its shadow covered Rex's head, and the axe was raised high. Rex felt a sharp pain in his leg. He was hit just now, and his face was covered in sweat. He tried his best to stand up. At the critical moment, he suddenly realized that the shadow under his feet seemed to have expanded. Then, there was a shrill sound that was getting louder and louder. Bang! An alloy airdrop cabin landed right beside this magic colossus. The shockwave sent both the magic colossus and Rex flying. Dong dong dong, then, there was a series of landing sounds. Many airdrop cabins of the same style landed around them. Whoosh! The cabin door opened, and a group of warriors in heavy steel armor walked out. The leader was a human man in a black trench coat and many spherical accessories. He looked around curiously. Are these people the new reinforcements from the upper realm? Even though Rex had a calm personality, his eyes could not help but flash with surprise. At this moment, the magic colossus ran toward this human man and chopped down with its axe. Rex subconsciously wanted to shout to remind him, but the next scene made him swallow his words. He saw this man raise his hand, and with a slight drop of his wrist, he easily grabbed the axe that was enough to split a running beast in half. He raised his eyebrows. Wow, this planet's way of welcoming guests is so warm. We came at the right time. Don't just stand there, get to work. Lin Go, who was fighting, looked over and heaved a sigh of relief. Chapter 400. Pew 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 pew. The professional players who followed the airdrop cabins raised their large-caliber armor-piercing cannons and fired at the dark green magic colossuses around them. A series of sparks exploded on the magic colossuses, and clouds of thick gray smoke burst out. In the endless steel storm, these magic colossuses that could take the charge of the knights head-on trembled and kept retreating. They could not even take a step forward, and their bodies kept shattering into pieces. In the past 9 months, they had gone through dozens of combat missions and had a lot of experience dealing with magic-type combat puppets. Although their numbers were much smaller than the army, they had taken over the battlefield. Herluz took out his battleship slicing blade and smashed a magic colossus with one slash. Aroshia and the 3 Volga brothers stood beside Han Shao and did not move. Han Shao narrowed his eyes and looked at the battlefield. He stood where he was and did not plan to do anything himself. Herluz and this group of experts were enough to take care of the enemies. His subordinates' capabilities were up to standard, so he was very comfortable being a boss and not doing anything. To put it simply, this incident was a villain who wanted to cause trouble on a planet, so he was invited to take care of it. There were at least hundreds of similar incidents happening in the Shattered Star Ring every day, and the targets of the villains were all strange. They had experienced it many times and were used to it. They were very familiar with the process. The airdrop landed and started to clear the area. Han Shao did not even need to command. He was proud. 9 months had passed, and he had deliberately controlled the size of Black Star. He still had the same number of people as before, but as his resume grew, he had a good reputation. He had cooperated with large mercenary groups such as Sky Ring, Blades, and Purple Gold. Although most of the missions were simple, he had a reliable performance when faced with difficult problems, and it did not take long for him to establish an impression of a reliable partner. Originally, most of the large mercenary groups only wanted to rope him in because of his floating dragon background, but they slowly acknowledged Black Star's ability. When the Colton Star Cluster needed external help, Han Shao was often the first choice to be considered. When a mercenary group accumulated a certain amount of credit points, they would receive additional benefit. They would be listed in the list of teams with good credit points in that area by the back-end system, and some emergency missions in that area would be automatically sent to Black Star. That was how Star Dawn's reinforcement invitation came about. Actually, he had just completed a guard mission with the Blades team the day before yesterday. According to habit, He should have rested for a while in the Ubarely Hub stronghold. However, when he saw that it was an emergency on Planet Dawn, he decided to cancel his vacation and come over to work. This planet was one of the targets of the mutation disaster mission that had yet to be activated, so he came over to take care of it. The development level of the civilization on Planet Dawn is at the low magic level and has not reached the level of the magic industry. They place more emphasis on individual strength. Although they have sent some ascenders, who should be grade B to God Aura, the society's overall understanding of the galaxy is limited, even worse than Planet Aquamarine. Han Shao thought to himself. Every civilization had a different name for the galaxy. Planet Dawn called it the Higher World and Ascension, which showed that their civilization was more focused on the individual. Furthermore, most of the people did not understand the situation in the galaxy and only knew that it was a higher-level world. This was also because the kingdoms did not have such common knowledge. Darkstar had also placed the mutation source there. Now that 9 months had passed, it was almost time for the version 10 update. It was time to visit the other locations of the mutation disaster in version 20 to be mentally prepared. Black Star, I've heard a lot about you. Brother Lin walked over, and his tone was filled with respect and fawning. With Black Star's men participating in the battle, he was not worried about the battle at all. He took the opportunity to talk to Han Shao and get to know him. Hello. Han Shao extended his hand and shook his hand. Brother Lin was a little flattered. He had thought that this kind of person would be more arrogant and did not expect him to be so approachable. While the two of them were chatting, Rex crawled up from the ground, picked up his shield and spear, and took a deep breath. He did not have the time to communicate with the reinforcements and hurriedly joined the battle. His army had a chance to catch their breaths and regroup to cooperate with the players. The magic colossuses shattered one after another. With the help of a group of players, the battle ended very quickly. The remaining soldiers hurriedly bandaged their wounds and used the time to recover their stamina. Rex walked in front of Han Shao and Brother Lin. With a solemn expression, he did not bother with pleasantries and said, "After destroying these magic colossuses, the door to the altar will open. Rizar's church is gathered there, and there are more enemies waiting for us. We do not have time to waste. Please follow us immediately." Rex saw how respectful Brother Lin was toward Han Shao during the battle and knew that this group of new reinforcements had a strong background. His tone was filled with respect and caution. The guests from the higher world had always been mysterious in his eyes. He could not help but glance at the airdrop cabin and secretly guess how the people from the higher world used this thing to descend. He did not know the principle behind it. "Okay, let's end the chat here. Let's get to work." Han Shao nodded. Since it was the employer's request, they would get to work first. After a simple rest, the Alliance army hurriedly entered the ruins to find a passage. They quickly found the entrance to the underground altar. This was an abandoned underground city that had been transformed into a secret base by Rizar and had been used secretly for many years. Everyone entered in a single file and followed the corridor all the way down. The underground city was not big and the passageway was narrow. Rex had a large number of troops, so he could only leave a portion of them on the ground as sentries. Han Shao and the others followed behind and wandered alone outside the army. This matter was very serious in Rex's eyes, but to him it was very simple. Find the target boss, kill it directly, and the world would be peaceful. At the underground altar in the deepest part of the underground city, the mirror showed the scene of the army entering. The expressions of the hundreds of believers all changed. "Damn it, why is there another group of warriors from the higher world here? Our plan is ruined. The magic colossuses did not kill enough people, and the blood is not enough to activate the altar. It's over," the high-level believers said in a panic. Rizar could no longer remain calm. His expression became serious as he stared at Han Shao and the others in the mirror. A hint of envy, yearning, and jealousy rose in his eyes. These people are all from the higher world, soon, very soon. I'm about to become someone from the higher world too. Rizar had always thought that the people trapped on the planet were pitiful. The believers thought that Rizar carried out this plan to become the strongest mage. He scoffed at this, saying, "These ignorant believers did not know how vast the galaxy was. They were like frogs in a well, narrow-minded. Pitiful. Perhaps in the eyes of the galactic residents, the galaxy was nothing much. However, to the people who looked up at the galaxy and could only use their imagination to describe the universe, being able to go to the galaxy was an extremely huge attraction. Furthermore, he knew for sure that there were other civilizations and races in the galaxy. His desire for knowledge and curiosity burned like a burning flame that could not be suppressed. This was the exploratory instinct of intelligent creatures. They wanted to improve and personally stand at the peak to see the scenery that they desired. When they did not have it, they often desired it very much. Rizar's goal had always been to go to the higher world. For this, he could do anything and ignore the consequences. However, the sudden arrival of the mercenaries from the higher world changed the plan that he had painstakingly prepared. If it were not for these people, his plan would definitely succeed. A deep madness appeared in his eyes. "Teacher, what should we do?" the high-level believer asked anxiously. Rizar lowered his head and looked at the restless believers under the altar. This was the team that he had spent decades building. A hint of coldness appeared on his old face, and he slowly said, "Lend me your flesh." His staff glowed with a demonic red light, and the stone pillars of the altar glowed with a bright red glow. A complicated magic circle appeared on the ground. At this moment, all the noise disappeared. The believers' eyes popped out, and their faces turned purple as if they were suffocating. They grabbed at their throats crazily, but their limbs did not listen to them. One by one, they fell to the ground and struggled crazily. Their bodies were twisted into countless strange postures. That high-level believer's face was filled with pain, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. He climbed up the altar with difficulty, and his trembling hand wanted to grab the hem of Rizar's robe. However, his hand was only halfway there when his eyes suddenly exploded. Blood gushed out and dripped onto the ground, turning into long and thin blood lines. Like long red earthworms, they automatically crawled to the base of the altar and seeped in. Hundreds of believers died abruptly. The blood in their bodies was drained by the magic array, and they turned into dry corpses with their mouths wide open and their faces sunken. The altar, which had absorbed the blood, became extremely smooth, like a gray jade. The scene that was still noisy just now was already dead silent. There was finally enough blood. Rumble, the altar buzzed, and the ritual was activated. The majestic magic power that contained the smell of blood constructed a special magic circle. Behind the altar was a vein of origin water. The slowly flowing underground origin water suddenly boiled, and tiny light spots floated on the surface of the water like fireflies. These were all magic power materialized. The light spots suddenly gathered into a few light dragons, and they were crazily absorbed by Rizar through his facial features. Rex finally arrived with his troops 5 minutes later. He saw the altar and the dried corpses on the ground. When he saw that Rizar was absorbing the magic power of the origin water, his expression turned as if he was facing a great enemy. **T, the ritual has started. We have to stop them immediately." Rex was about to call his troops and charge over. At this moment, magic buzzed around the altar. Defensive magic circles appeared on the walls, and colorful lights covered the altar. Thousands of defensive magic spells were stacked on top of each other, making it extremely sturdy. The ground rumbled, and 20 new statues crawled out from the ground, blocking the altar. Rex's expression changed drastically. With so many defensive magic spells and statues, he would not be able to charge over in a short time. He originally thought that he could stop the ritual after finding Rizar, but now, he was blocked outside. Rizar had planned for so long and could not afford to make any mistake. Naturally, he had set up a large number of defensive measures. As long as he could hold off the enemy for a short while, he would be able to complete the magic power absorption ritual. Thousands of kilometers of origin water contained majestic magic power. This ritual was passed down from ancient times. It built a magic power source in one's body, which was why it could contain so much magic power and break through the limit of one's strength. If we let him complete the ritual, the southern territory will be finished. Quickly break these defensive magic spells and charge with me. Rex's tone was anxious. Before he could finish, someone pressed on his shoulder and interrupted him. Rex turned around and saw that Han Shao had walked past him to the front of the troop. "You guys are too slow. Let me do it." Han Zhao's tone was unquestionable. He had the confidence of a professional. Different from the anxious Planet Dawn soldiers, he had a calm expression and did not care about these defensive measures at all. Clatter! The next moment, compressed orbs flew out one after another and spread out quickly. Hundreds of cannons of various types surrounded Han Shao. The cannon fire instantly tore apart the layers of magic defenses. In front of him, these defensive spells were as fragile as paper. In 9 months, although Han Shao did not change his combat system, he had strengthened it and increased the number of machines, making them more powerful. In less than 10 seconds, 20 statues were torn into pieces. The intertwining flames lit up the underground city as bright as day. The terrifying power that he suddenly unleashed shocked these soldiers. Rex's face was filled with shock as he mumbled, "What terrifying attack power, even stronger than the legendary Ascenders. Even the Kingdom Protectors do not have such strength. Is this the power of the warriors of the higher world?" He had heard some secrets from the Kingdom Protectors. The warriors of the higher world were completely different from them, who only used magic power. They had all kinds of strange abilities. This was an eye-opener. The cannon fire easily tore apart the defensive spells and shattered the altar. The ritual was instantly interrupted. Rizar fell to the ground. He was shocked and furious, and his face was filled with disbelief. He did not expect that the defensive measures that he had set up for so many years would be completely torn apart in such a short time. The strength of this mercenary from the higher world was far beyond his imagination. However, the next moment, Rizar's expression changed. He felt the surging magic power in his body suddenly break through that layer of shackles. A new power was born in his body. His eyes widened, and tears suddenly flowed down his cheeks. "I did it! I did it!" Although the ritual was interrupted not long after it started, part of the magic power that he absorbed had already helped him break through the bottleneck and finally reach the standard set by Ghidorah. He could now go to the higher world that he had always wanted. The increase in power gave Rizar the illusion that he could defeat all enemies with a wave of his hand. However, he did not want to fight. He turned around and was about to activate the explosive rune to make the underground city collapse. He would then leave through the secret passage. His heart was filled with excitement. His wish of many years was about to be fulfilled. However, plans were often the opposite of reality. Sensing the rapidly increasing energy reaction, Han Shao raised his eyebrows. "Yo, you broke through to grade B temporarily." But, the next second, the Void Dragon mechanical suit instantly appeared. Han Shao teleported to Rizar's side, pressed down on his head, and slammed it down. Bang! Before Rizar could react, his head was already in the ground. His staff slipped out of his hand and flew far away. The power that had just increased did not have any effect at all. The feeling of power only lasted for a few seconds before it was scattered. Chapter 401. His old face was stuck to the ground, and his beautiful robe was stained with dust. It was as if he was being pressed down by a mountain. Rizar could not move at all. He was both shocked and furious. Years of hope had finally appeared. He could not fall in the darkness before dawn no matter what. Even if the opponent was a strong enemy from the higher world, it was not impossible for him to fight now. Rizar activated his magic power. Bright red magic power mixed with blue magic power gushed out with his body as the center, creating an intense gale. The expressions of Rex and the other Planet Dawn soldiers, who were 100 meters away, all changed. Nidorm repulsion ring. Pushed away enemies within 10 meters and was used to deal with enemies at close range. It was a must-learn spell for Planet Dawn mages. Its power depended on the mage's ability. The ring released by Rizar was the strongest that Rex had ever seen. It was rumored that only Ascenders could have such powerful magic power. This meant that Rizar had reached that level. Rex's expression tensed up. This was troublesome. Prepare to throw spears as support. Rex ordered loudly. The blue shield knights around him all raised their conical spears and prepared to throw them. In his opinion, Rizar had reached the level of an Ascender, so he should be on par with the warriors from the higher world. Just in case, he decided to help. However, when he turned around, he realized that the other mercenaries from the higher world were all calm and had no intention of attacking. "Don't worry," Lingu said with a smile. "Captain Black Star's ability is well known in the mercenary circle of the Garten star system." Rex was stunned. He took a closer look and saw through the backflow of magic power. No matter how powerful Rizar's magic power was, Han Shao was still standing at the same spot, as steady as a rock. His outstretched palm pinned Rizar to the ground like a nail, not moving at all. At this time, Rizar suddenly felt that the mechanical suit's palm on his head started to generate a terrifying power that made him tremble in fear. It seemed like some powerful attack was about to be released at close range. His weak body would definitely not be able to take it. In his panic, he did not even bother to push Han Shao away and hurriedly cast all sorts of defensive enhancements on himself. The next moment, gray energy mist appeared on the Void Dragon mechanical suit. It flowed along the arm and spurted out from the palm. Rizar's head happened to be in the palm, and he welcomed the first wave of power. Boom! Intense explosion. Gray fog gushed out. Like thousands of sharp blades, the gray shock waves spread out in all directions. The ground was instantly covered with gullies, as if it had been plowed. At the center of the explosion, there was a hole with a diameter of nearly 2 meters. Before the aftershock of the explosion dissipated, Han Zhao's body glowed with a gray light, and the second energy spray erupted. Void jet. Even a lion would need to go all out to catch a rabbit. Even if the enemy was weaker, Han Shao would not give them a chance and would still go all out. Although Rizar had broken through to grade B and was at the same level as Han Shao, he had only just reached the threshold and was not familiar with his own power yet. Han Technician dealt with this kind of newbie grade B as easily as a father beating his son. He continuously shot out 3 Void Jet at full power, consuming 1,170 points of the mechanical suit's energy. 3 high damage numbers popped up above Rizar's head, dealing a total of 4,700 HP in just a few seconds. The killing efficiency was extremely high. This was the strongest explosive move without using Flaming Will. Flaming Will had a cooldown of 5 minutes, but Void Jet did not. It had already become Han Zhao's regular trump card. The smoke dissipated and Rizar lay in the hole. His entire body was covered in wounds from the energy impact. Void Jet was a pure energy attack that contained the space attribute. Just like how the ice attribute could slow down and the fire attribute could burn, the space attribute's direct effect was to nullify part of the target's resistance and reduce the damage reduction. The damage in an extremely short amount of time was more than half of Rizar's HP. Rizar was heavily injured and unconscious. He even had a concussion. A Grade B mini-boss type character was easily defeated by Han Shao in less than 10 seconds. After many battles in the past 9 months, Han Shao already knew the various attributes and functions of the Void Dragon mechanical suit very well. Among the lightweight individual mechanical suits of the same grade, the Void Dragon mechanical suit was definitely one of the top. Against supers of the same grade, Void Jet was an extremely useful ultimate move. The difference in strength is actually this big? Rex's mouth was dry, and his eyes were filled with shock. Rizar, whose strength had increased tremendously, was already one of the top supers on planet Dawn. Even 10 of him would not be able to defeat the current Rizar. However, in front of this mercenary, Rizar was like a baby who could not fight back at all. Are all the people in the higher world this strong? The soldiers of planet Dawn were in a daze. A huge crisis in their eyes was resolved so easily. Everyone felt that it was unreal, as if they were dreaming. Han Shao grabbed Rizar by the back of his collar and threw him in front of Rex. The mechanical suit folded automatically, and he returned to his casual clothes. The hundreds of cannons around him turned back into compressed orbs one after another. Pulled by the magnetic force, they rolled toward him on the ground. One by one, they lined up obediently and crawled back to his belt and the inner lining of his clothes along his legs. It was like hundreds of cannons returning to their nest, and thousands of balls paying homage to their master. Done. Pack up. Han Shao clapped his hands. With his current strength, it was not difficult for him to dominate planet Dawn. One word, crush. As if waking up from a dream, Rex ordered his subordinates to tie Rizar up layer by layer with chains. He explained, "The king wants me to capture Rizar alive and bring him back for a public trial. He also wants me to interrogate him about where he learned the ancient ritual to prevent anyone else from knowing how to absorb the origin water. You guys can do whatever you want. My job is done." Han Shao raised his eyebrows. At this time, Rizar slowly woke up. He was dizzy and realized that he was tied up by chains that suppressed magic. The magic in his body was forced to stay still and could not be used. He subconsciously wanted to struggle and resist, but he suddenly saw Han Shao beside him and quickly stopped. As long as Han Shao was beside him, resisting would just be asking for humiliation and suffering. However, he could not hold back his anger. He glared at Han Shao and clenched his teeth. If it were not for this group of reinforcements from the higher world, he would have succeeded by now. Before this, he would never have expected the Vane Kingdom to be able to summon such powerful reinforcements. These intruders were the culprits that ruined his plan. Rizar was furious. "Why did you guys stop me?" "This has nothing to do with you guys," Han Shao shrugged. "Why do you ask so many questions? It's all work. I've dealt with dozens of villains like you. What right do thieves have to complain about the police? If you want to blame someone, blame your bad luck for running into us when you were committing the crime. What's your motive?" "I just don't want to be trapped on a backward planet forever. Can you understand the feeling of disillusionment and surprise when I found out that we're just one of the countless races in the universe? We're not special, but it also means that we have a lot of companions. I don't want to be ignorant and backward forever. I don't want to stay here and wait for death like the people on this planet. I want to see the real world. Since my ritual has failed, there is no need for you to deal with me anymore. Aren't you mercenaries? If they can hire you to deal with me, I can hire you too. Please take me away from planet Dawn. I can give you all my wealth as a reward. If you don't need it, I can also work for you," Rizar said as he tugged on the chains, making a rattling sound. Rizar was still trying his best. The soldiers beside him could not help but become nervous when they heard that. They were afraid that the mercenaries from the higher world would betray them. Han Shao did not hesitate and rejected the new mission or Rizar's request. That popped up on the interface. "Sorry, we Black Star are a trustworthy mercenary group. Furthermore, even if you have a good reason, "It's not an excuse to harm the planet," he said calmly. Rizar was angry and helpless. He did not say anything and let the soldiers pull on his chains. Back on the ground, the army gathered and rested. They were about to return. Rex found Han Shao and said solemnly, "Captain Black Star, Captain Lin Go, on behalf of the Vane Kingdom, I would like to invite all of you to the palace as guests. The king wants to thank you personally. I wonder if you guys have the time." "Sure, then we'll go with you guys. We can take a look around Planet Dawn." Han Shao nodded. Of course, this was an excuse. His main goal was to get information about the signs of the mutation disaster. Going through the upper world was the most convenient way to gather information. Since the king had come to him personally, he would not miss it. "I'll stay too. Let's go together." Lin Go originally did not want to stay, but when he saw Han Shao agree, he quickly changed his mind. His goal was to stay with the Black Star mercenary a little longer and make his presence known. The Alliance army quickly cleaned up the battlefield, and the tribes left separately. The Blue Shield Knights escorted Rizar and headed toward the Vane Kingdom. Late at night, the Blue Shield Knights were stationed on a plain. The night on Planet Dawn was very dark, and one could not even see their own fingers. Most of the creatures in the wild were dark creatures, and light had the effect of dispelling wild beasts. The Knights' temporary camp was equipped with fluorescent lighting spells as a light source. The weak fluorescent light floated in the camp, and they could barely see. Rizar was locked in a prison van in the middle of the camp. The guards around him kept changing shifts and keeping an eye on him. Late at night, in a single tent, Han Shao turned on his galactic communicator and looked at the mercenary hiring interface. Chapter 402. Black Star Mercenary Credibility Points, 875, High Credibility Level, Total Size, 173 Grade D, 39 Grade, 132 Grade B, 2 missions completed, 76 Main Area of Activity, Colton Star Cluster History, Usunial Defense Battle, Silver Rescue Operation, Rosai Planet 9512 Exploration, Uberly Hub Ladon, Large Stargate Maintenance Guard, Note, Eliminating Parasitic Space-Eating Bugs. Pursuit of Purple Fungus Civilization, Rebel Leader Pilipalapa Wasasa. There are 71 missions left. Collapse/Expand Founder. Black Star Han Shao. Date of Creation, Year 688, October 2. Overall Evaluation, Small to medium-sized mercenary group. They have a good reputation, high credibility, and strong abilities. They have completed many missions with high ratings. Most of the mercenaries under them are immortal. They have a cooperative relationship with many large armies. They are stationed in Uberly Hub all year round and are often in charge of the surrounding affairs. They are under the command of Ames, the Dragon Emperor. They are a reliable mercenary group active in the Colton Star Cluster. In the past 9 months, the Black Star Mercenaries' history had increased by quite a bit. With the players as his combat strength, he did not lose any manpower and could even maximize his gains. It was very convenient. In the past 9 months, he had only done cooperative missions and kept a low profile, earning quite a lot of money. His savings had reached 784,000 anas. Other than buying some materials, metals, and parts to build new machines, he had saved the rest to complete his class advancement mission. With so much money, buying 1 high-end knowledge was not a problem, but 2 would be a little difficult. According to the standards of galactic mercenaries, the missions on Planet Dawn were very simple, so the reward was naturally not high. However, he did not accept this mission just for the reward. Because Han Shao was preparing to find out more about the mutation disaster on Planet Dawn, he had let the spaceship that was hovering outside the atmosphere of Planet Dawn leave first during the day. He had hitched a ride there. It was good to have more partners. Traveling was free, and it was even better than DD spaceship. The faint light from the communicator's screen shone on his face. The light and shadow were 3-dimensional and unpredictable. It'll be the International League in a few days. Once we're done here, let's bring the team back to Uberly Hub. 3 months ago. Well, that's more than 2 weeks ago for the players. The Tournament Alliance released the rules for the first international finals. They said that the shop had set up a gathering crystal that was specially bought for the shortlisted players from various countries. The effect was similar to the dungeon crystal. The players would gather from each planet to a simulated competition venue, and the competition would be broadcasted live. The format of the first competition was the same as in his previous life. After the players were able to travel through space, the international competition would be held in a real environment. The stage would then become planets and star systems. The players from these Chinese clubs had followed him for a year, and they had earned a lot of money. They were equipped with powerful equipment, and they would definitely perform better in the international tournament than in his previous life. In his previous life, the Chinese club's performance in the first tournament was quite infuriating. They didn't play the game until it was time, and they were stuck in a stalemate. In order to prevent the public from blaming them, their tactics were basically dragged out and cowardly. Sometimes they would be able to exhaust the enemy to death, and sometimes they would still lose after exhausting the enemy for half a day. It made the spectators feel aggrieved and uncomfortable. In the end, when the Chinese team's matches were broadcasted, the viewership ratings were very low. The players preferred to watch the passionate fights between the gays and foreigners, and when they encountered the Chinese team's counterattacks, they would directly skip the counterattacks. Although the Chinese club's rankings in the first tournament were passable, they didn't have any outstanding performances. The first impression that they left on the world was that they were good at counterattacking. If they don't become more ferocious this time, they would have followed me for nothing. Han Xiao curled his lips. After the International League, it will be almost time for the version update. The players will temporarily disappear, and the benefits of accepting mercenaries won't be high anymore. At that time, I won't be a mercenary. Small teams will be more flexible, and I can make some preparations for the mutation disaster in year 20. I need to come up with a plan, and at the same time, I can also trick some main character-type characters to increase my staff. While thinking, Han Xiao suddenly felt a slight anomaly. His eyes flashed, and he stood up and walked out of the tent. The surroundings were silent. He looked around and was slightly stunned. The prison carriage in the middle of the camp was empty. Rizar was nowhere to be found, and the guards around him were also gone. Escaped? He didn't want anything to go wrong with the mission. He changed into his mechanical suit and scanned with the radar. He discovered that Rizar's signal was in a small forest outside the camp, and there were more than 10 soldiers' signals beside him. Not far away, there was a single signal that was much stronger than the soldiers. After checking the database, it was actually the commander of the Knights, Rex. The other soldiers are all asleep. Why did they kidnap Rizar and bring him to the small forest at night? F***ck, it can't be. Han Xiao took in a deep breath. That was an old man. He was convinced by this taste. He walked into the forest in fear and tiptoed, ready to turn and run at any moment before he saw anything unclean. He turned on his night vision mode and carefully looked at the scene in the forest. Rizar was tied up tightly with chains that suppressed magic. A few knights surrounded him, holding steel swords. Their lips were moving as if they were saying something. Han Xiao turned up the sound collection function of his combat suit and heard their conversation. I'll ask you one last time. Where did you get the ritual method? I found a stone tablet in the ruins of an ancient underground city. The incomplete ritual method was written on it. I used blood as the power to change the spell. How many times do you want me to say it? Who else knows about this spell? Not a single one. After I memorized the spell, I destroyed the stone tablet. Do you think I would tell others about such a dangerous spell? It's only safe in my hands. Rizar had an impatient expression as he answered the knight who asked the question in front of him. This knight rubbed his hands and suppressed his excitement in his tone. How about this, let's make a deal. You tell me the ritual method and I'll let you go. To tell you the truth, I'm also very interested in the higher world, hee. Rizar's eyes lit up as if he had grabbed onto his last life-saving straw. Haha, there's always a way out. Immediately after, Rizar thought for a while, and a mocking smile appeared on his face. From his perspective, he felt that if he told them the method, these people would definitely kill him. He secretly raised his guard and asked, "How do I believe that you're not trying to trick me into telling you the spell?" The knight in front of him said, "We're the guards on duty at this time. If you die, it'll be very easy to track us down." "Then, you're not afraid that I'll kill you after I escape?" Rizar narrowed his eyes. "Humph, do you dare? Once there's a magic wave, those mercenaries from the higher world will come and finish you off. Then, if I run, won't you be tracked down too? Hee, you don't have to worry about that. What if you immediately call for help after you let me go? Then you can rat us out." After this conversation, Rizar gradually believed that these knights did want to make a deal with him. His tense nerves relaxed a little. His attention was on arguing with the knight in front of him, so he did not notice that the knights behind him quietly raised their steel swords and aimed at his vital parts. Even if Rizar was grade B, his life would still be in danger if he was pierced by a steel sword while his ability was suppressed. Han Shao secretly observed, and his eyes flashed. He originally thought that these knights were after Rizar's spell, and the deal was almost done. Why did they suddenly want to kill him? Seeing that these knights were about to make a move, Han Shao thought for a while and walked out. Hearing the footsteps, everyone present suddenly turned around. When they saw who it was, they were all shocked. Rizar's expression changed drastically. "Why is it you again?" If the conversation just now had been heard, the fire of hope that had been raised with much difficulty would have been extinguished by a piss. Han Shao glanced around and realized that although these knights were shocked, they did not panic because their private deal was exposed. "What's going on?" Han Shao decided to ask first. You heard it?" a knight asked carefully. "Guess." Han Zhao's gaze landed on his steel sword. "Kill him!" The knight roared, turned around, and stabbed Rizar in the chest. Blood splattered everywhere. Han Zhao's expression was weird. He thought that these knights wanted to attack him. What was going on now? Rizar's eyes widened. Before he could react, the other knights also stabbed him with their swords. Han Zhao's figure flashed, and these knights only felt their vision blur. Their bodies flew into the air, and were instantly kicked away by Han Shao. "Although I don't know what's going on, I'll stop you guys first." Han Shao glanced at Rizar. This guy was kneeling on the ground, his face pale, and he was panting heavily. Although he was a master mage, his endurance was more than 100, so he would not die. The steel sword did not pierce deep, but it probably pierced through his lungs, making it difficult for him to breathe. "Can anyone explain?" Han Shao glanced at the knights. Everyone pursed their lips and did not say anything. Turning around and looking deep into the forest, Han Shao said to the darkness, "The one hiding, they're not talking, so you explain it to me." Approaching footsteps sounded in the forest. Rex, who had been hiding at the side for a long time, walked out with a serious expression. When Han Shao appeared, he knew that he could not hide anymore. Taking a deep breath, Rex slowly said, "These knights are my trusted subordinates. I arranged for them to be on duty together. I brought him here to kill Rizar." Han Shao raised his eyebrows. "Didn't you already capture him? Why do you still need to assassinate him? You can just kill him openly." Rex shook his head. "The king wants me to capture him alive, put him in jail for a public trial, and put him in jail. Captain Blackstar, you're not from our kingdom, so I'll be honest with you. For a criminal like Rizar who has ascended level, The kingdom's upper echelons will very likely hand him over to Ghidorah's emissary in exchange for something. This way, Rizar will live and go to the higher world as he wished. I don't want to give someone like him, who almost killed millions of citizens for his own selfish reasons. Also, Rizar knows the ritual to absorb the origin water. Maybe someone in the kingdom has selfish motives and will force him to tell us the ritual spell and let him live. This kind of terrifying spell has the risk of spreading. Once this happens, there will be a similar crisis. Therefore, even if I have to disobey the king's orders, I cannot let him reach the capital alive. As long as I kill him like this, I can use the excuse that Rizar escaped and was killed by us. Captain Blackstar, I'm very grateful for your timely help, but this is our kingdom's matter. Please don't interfere. Rex's tone was stern. Although he knew that he was no match for Han Shao, he had no intention of backing down. Han Shao was enlightened. Oh, so that's how it is. The deal is a trick to distract Rizar. You have some ideas. He sized up Rex. He was so righteous and righteous. Was he another main character? Or, did you make up an excuse long ago and put on an act in front of me? Han Zhao's eyes turned. He pointed at Rizar and said, Since you don't want him to go back alive, why don't you give him to me? That way, it'll be easier for you to die. What do you want him to do? Rex frowned. Don't ask. Anyway, I will bring him to the galaxy. The higher world, far away from you guys. I will never let him come back. Hearing this, Rizar was overjoyed. His dream was to go to the higher world. He was already in despair, but he did not expect to see a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. However, when he looked up, he saw Han Shao smiling at him. There was an indescribable meaning in the smile. It was malicious and seemed to be emitting a chilling aura. Rizar shivered for some reason. The excitement he just had quickly cooled down. Chapter 403. Boom. The explosion woke up the night. The Blue Shield Knights in the camp walked out of their tents and looked at the forest not far away in shock. Thick smoke was rising. They turned around and saw that Rizar, who was in the prisoner carriage, was missing. They were shocked. The prisoner escaped. At this moment, someone shouted. The knights hurriedly picked up their shields and steel swords and rushed to the scene of the explosion. After entering the forest, they saw Han Shao standing in front of a huge pit. Inside the pit were charred body pieces that looked like charcoal. They could not see the human form. Rex hurried over with a serious expression. What happened here? Your prisoner almost escaped, but I found out. Han Shao shrugged. You saw it yourself. I accidentally went overboard. Rizar was strangled to death? The knights who rushed over were shocked. Rex's expression changed. He shook his head and said, The king wants him alive. He wouldn't have died, but he sought his own death. What a pity, as the commander, he settled this matter with a few words. He pretended to severely punish a few guards and then ordered the knights under him to go back to sleep. Seeing this, the others did not pursue the matter. Since Rizar was strangled to death, there was no need to escort him. They did not have to be nervous on the way. Many people heaved a sigh of relief and secretly felt refreshed. Most of them had the same thoughts as Rex. They wanted to kill Rizar. Some of the knights' hometowns were in the southern territory, and Rizar almost killed their families in the countryside. If it were not for the warriors from the higher world, the consequences would have been unimaginable. An attempted crime could not be treated as if nothing had happened. A few veterans who had been with Rex for a long time sensed something and looked at Rex meaningfully. They understood their superior. This escape was probably planned and put on a show for the king and nobles who wanted to capture Rizar alive. Killing Rizar was to prevent anyone from harboring evil intentions. Rex had a very high reputation in the army, and he was loved by everyone. The soldiers did not have a good impression of nobles, so they had a tacit understanding and pretended not to know anything. After everyone left, Rex nodded at Han Shao and left together with him. Han Shao did not return to the camp. Instead, he walked far away. In the dark night, he came to the back of a small hill. Rizar was thrown there. Herluz crossed his arms and guarded beside him. In the end, Rex still handed Rizar over. Although he really wanted to kill Rizar, he did not have much choice in front of Han Shao. He could only believe what Han Shao said. "How is he?" Han Shao asked. "The wound on his chest has been bandaged. He won't die," Herluz replied. "Very good. I'm going to follow the knights to the king's capital. You stay in the wilderness with Rizar. After I'm done, we'll call the spaceship and leave together." Herluz nodded. He then sized Rizar up and asked in confusion, "Black Star, do you want to recruit this mage? He's not a good person. Do I look like I lack people?" Han Shao patted his back and said, "Don't forget, I promised to bring hundreds of thousands of super warriors to solve the problem of Sunil. I don't like him." "All right, I'll listen to you. I'll stay and guard him. If he tries to run, I'll cut him in half." Herluz trusted Han Shao a lot. He knew that his fate was tied to Han Zhao's. Back then, he had only joined Black Star with a skeptical attitude. After so many things, he firmly believed that Han Shao had the ability to fulfill the promise he made when he first recruited him and change the future of his race. "Since you're not recruiting him, what do you want him to do?" Herluz asked. Rizar looked up at Han Shao. His old face was filled with fear. He did not know what was waiting for him. "Just watch." Han Shao took out a small suction cup device. There were many tiny needles in the center of the suction cup. He pressed them on the blood vessels on Rizar's arm. The needles were inserted into the blood vessels and slowly drew out blood. Gradually, they had a faint glow of magic. Rizar suddenly felt the magic in his body flowing away. He looked at the device on his arm that looked like a blood-sucking bug. This thing was drawing out his magic. No. He tried to struggle, but his strength was quickly disappearing. His magic was continuously disappearing. Very soon, the wrinkles on Rizar's face increased rapidly. It was as if he had aged 10 years. A sense of weakness spread throughout his body. It was as if he had returned to his childhood, when he was still an ordinary person. The magic in his body had dried up, and he seemed to have turned back into an ordinary person. "Where's my power? Give me back my power." He had only obtained the power of an ascender for less than half a day. He had not even properly experienced it yet, and he had already lost the power that he had obtained with much difficulty. Rizar broke down. Even when the plan that he had worked on for 20 years failed, he was not as desperate as he was now. Power was the foundation that supported his confidence, and Han Shao had taken away his foundation. After losing his power, Rizar's temperament seemed to have turned back into that of an ordinary person. No, he was even worse than an ordinary person. He cried and begged. Han Shao shook his head. Some people had power and could do whatever they wanted. Once they lost their power, they would become cowards, strong on the outside but weak on the inside. The device in his hand was the supergene extractor, experimental model, that he had obtained from the Dark Star's secret message bead. When Herluz saw this thing, he shivered. "Put it away. I'm scared." A few months ago, Han Shao had tested the effect of the extractor. The first test subject was Mad Blade. The effect of using it on players was to absorb 20 to 50 random attribute points and a certain amount of energy, which would be added to the user. The effect lasted from 10 to 120 minutes. In his previous life, the supergene extractor was in the hands of Dark Star. Players could only obtain the damaged supergene extractor by completing the related high-difficulty missions. The effect was similar to the one he had, but it was weaker. The practicality of the extractor in battle was very low because it needed to be in contact with the target's body to be effective. Most people had physical or magical armor, so it was difficult for it to be effective. Plus, the prerequisite was to control the enemy and make them not move. The prerequisite was very strict. However, the hidden function of the extractor had to be effective when the target was unprotected. The examples of unprotected states were hibernating, captured, paralyzed, willing, and so on. This meant that the target was under one's complete control. If the player was unlucky enough to be affected, they would enter a 12-hour period of weakness, which was commonly known as sheep's tail. Their attributes would decrease by 30 to 90 points, depending on the power of the extractor. If an NPC was affected, not only would they be weakened, but they would also produce an ability potion. After drinking it, they would temporarily obtain a certain ability of the target, which would appear as a temporary character summon card on the player's interface. The second test subject that Han Shao obtained this result was Herluz. Herluz clearly remembered the fear and weakness he felt when his power was taken away. He had only endured a small amount of damage, but it still took him a few days to recover. This thing that could take away the genes of supers was the natural enemy of supers. Just how many supers had been destroyed by the organization that created this device? Han Shao took out 3 empty tubes and stored the blood extracted by the device. You have received Ability Potion X3. He directly drank a tube of it. The sweet and fishy taste filled his mouth, and the warm blood flowed down his throat. It was very choking. Then, a unique warmth of magic power rippled through his body. You have received Character Summon Card, Rizar, Temporary. Character Summon Card, Rizar, Temporary, Origin Water Magic Power. Temporarily obtain power that exceeds one's own. Plus 20 all attribute. Duration, 5 to 15 minute. Number of uses, 0 to 1. This character summon card's duration, 15 days. Buff bonus, not a bad ability. Han Shao was very satisfied. Rizar's loss of magic power was only temporary. It was just that this crying old man himself did not know about it. This meant that Han Shao could continuously take advantage of him and mass-produce ability potions. Although the temporary character summon card's ability would be different every time, Han Shao believed that the players would pay for this new product. In Han Zhao's previous life, Darkstar had also used the Super Gene Extractor to carry out this plan. The difference was that Han Shao would not randomly grab people and use them as batteries. The temporary character summon card was just icing on the cake for him. He would not force it. He would only do it when he met someone he could do it with a clear conscience. I remember you begging me to bring you to the higher world. I'll agree to it now. Han Zhao's smile was like a demon in Rizar's eyes. This old man trembled, and his face was filled with fear and begging. Going to the higher world like this was completely different from what he had imagined. Deep regret rose from his heart and climbed up to his eyes. You're a demon. Rizar wanted to roar, but he could only make a weak sound. Han Shao was amused. You're the one complaining first? 2 days later, the Blue Shield Knights returned to the capital. This city was located on a plain. A origin river separated the city in the middle, making it the West Bank and the East Bank. It also separated the classes. On the East Bank were the noble mansions and palaces. They were exquisite and luxurious. On the West Bank was the crowded civilian area. There were many castles, and all kinds of arches and sewage pipes formed complicated street. Only those who had lived here for more than a decade remembered the route. Normal people would completely get lost after walking around a few times. It was noon. The sun was the size of a soybean hanging in the sky. The light was dim, giving the city a dark yellow color. The buildings and streets covered each other, and the light and shadows were scattered. It was like dusk when the sun was setting. However, this was the brightest time of the day on planet Dawn. Rex brought everyone to the east bank and stayed near the palace. The officer came to welcome them. Facing these guests from the higher world, the officer's attitude was even more respectful than when he was facing the king. He almost wanted to lower his head to the ground. On behalf of the Vane Kingdom, I welcome all of you to Planet Dawn as guests. His Majesty has invited all the warriors from the higher world to attend the palace banquet. He hopes that all of you will do him the honor. At that time, our Ascenders will communicate with all of you through the Kingdom Protector mages and pay the remuneration for this employment. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. Of course, no one had any objections. Chapter 404. At night, the palace was brightly lit. Everyone accepted the invitation and changed into exquisite formal attire brought by the steward to attend the banquet. The palace attendant led the way, and everyone came to the garden courtyard. It was already set up as an open-air banquet venue. The bright and warm firelight dispelled the darkness of the night. Exquisite food was placed on the long tables. There were green, yellow, and purple vegetables and fruits, fragrant roasted meat from unknown beasts, sweet pies overflowing with fresh milk, and light blue clear wine brewed from origin water. The attendants carried plates and shuttled among them. The musicians sat in the center and played strange instruments. The notes danced happily on the strings while the light blue-skinned Vanian nobles chatted with each other in the courtyard. The banquet had just started. There was a pavilion in the corner of the courtyard. The Vanian king and the high-ranking nobles were sitting in it. They kept looking at the path in the courtyard. When they saw the arrival of the upper world warriors, the king cleared his throat and stood up. "Welcome to the banquet. I'm Gallo Mio. Thank you for your generous help," said the king. Mio meant king and leader in the Vanian language. It was also how the king addressed himself. King Gallo was a rather sturdy middle-aged man. As he thanked them, he walked down from the pavilion and welcomed them personally without any arrogance. The other nobles stopped talking and bowed to Han Shao and the rest. In front of the guests from the upper world, they knew that their noble status was meaningless. This was a difference in level. It was similar to how the chiefs of a primitive tribe faced the guests from a civilized city, but the difference was even bigger. The upper world warriors were powerful dragons that could ignore the local snake. Lin Ge looked like he was following Han Zhao's lead. Han Shao had no choice but to answer as the leader. He said a lot of polite words like it was a small matter. Then, King Gallo tried to get closer to them and said a few jokes that were not funny at all. The nobles burst into laughter as if it was some extremely funny joke. A group of kingdom protectors walked out with the galactic communicator in their hand. They were so careful as if it was some kind of holy item. After a few operations, the virtual projection of an ascender appeared in the middle of the courtyard, causing the Vanians to exclaim in shock. Han Shao heard an old noble beside him say to his son, "Cherish this moment. Only when important guests arrive can we see such a miracle." The eldest Volga curled his lips. "These people have never seen the world." The second brother glanced at him coldly. "Weren't we like this when we were young?" The eldest brother was speechless. He snorted and stopped talking. He turned around and saw the third brother gnawing on a beast's leg happily, oil dripping from his mouth. King Jiaolu exchanged a few words with the Ascender. The Ascender thanked everyone for their help and transferred the reward to everyone's account. Then, he ended the communication. King Jiaolu smiled and said, "Please enjoy the food and wine to your heart's content. This will be a wonderful night." The host and guests enjoyed themselves, and everyone blended into the atmosphere of the banquet. Different civilizations and races had their own cultural customs. Everyone followed the customs. From time to time, nobles would come over to chat with them. Their attitudes were cautious and curious. There were also programs at the banquet. Not long after, a group of dancers came on stage and shuttled through the crowd. Han Shao did not have any feelings for these blue-skinned Vanians. He drank a few mouthfuls of origin water wine and turned around to see Erosia staring at the dining table, as if she was hesitating whether to eat or not. Han Shao walked over and habitually put his arm around her shoulders. He glanced at her and said, "There haven't been any battles recently, so you don't need to use your abilities. Eat something." Erosia ignored Han Zhao's actions and picked up a purple fruit. She bit her lips and hesitated. She did not need to eat to survive. She would automatically absorb the free energy in the environment to maintain her own consumption. This was the characteristic of an energy life form. However, Han Shao was curious about how she would feel when she ate, so he teased her to eat some food. Although Erosia did not feel hungry, when she tasted the delicious food, she felt that eating was a very interesting thing. Eating became her entertainment activity. Compared to the ignorant and extremely calm personality 9 months ago, the current Erosia had more human characteristic. Erosia's digestive ability was very powerful. All the food would be broken down into energy without leaving a single residue, so she did not need to excrete. However, a strange accident happened. The energy transformation could only be used on herself and could not be applied to external objects. Before the food was completely digested, the energy transformation would lose its physical form, and the residue in her stomach that had not been completely digested would fall out in the form of sputtering. At that time, everyone was about to start a battle with a group of enemies. This scene shocked both sides. Everyone looked at the sputtering food residue under the energy transformation and fell into deep silence. Ever since then, Erosia would count the days with her fingers before she ate, calculating whether or not she would need to use her Esper ability before the food was digested. Oh, her Esper ability's strength was increasing rapidly, not losing out to the players at all. It had already reached C+, and she was only half a grade away from the mission requirement of grade B. After picking up and putting down the fruit several times, Erosia finally took a bite of the fruit and showed a happy expression. She handed the fruit that she had taken a bite of to Han Shao and said, "It's delicious. Try it." Han Shao took a bite, and his face suddenly wrinkled. He pushed Erosia's hand away and said, "It's sour. You have such a strong taste. Keep it for yourself." Han Shao guided her to train her energy. After getting along for a long time, Erosia became closer and closer to Han Shao. The interaction between the two was very intimate, but there were no improper thoughts. Han Shao did not treat Erosia as a normal female creature at all. In his eyes, she was an energy body without gender, very pure. Erosia herself did not feel like a female, so it was very natural for her to put her arm around his shoulder. Walking to the side, Han Shao estimated that it was about time. He found King Gallo and said that he wanted to talk. King Gallo invited Han Shao into the pavilion and asked with a smile, "Captain Blackstar, what do you want to talk to me about?" Han Shao lowered his voice and said, "It's like this. I want to ask you about a situation. To tell you the truth, I have a special intuition ability. When I arrived, I felt that there seemed to be some kind of virus from the galaxy existing on planet Dawn." King Gallo was shocked. He sat up straight and said, "You're saying that our planet is infected with some kind of disease?" No, this is just a feeling. I still need you to check if there are any large-scale similar symptoms recently. Only then can we confirm whether there is a virus or not." King Gallo took it very seriously. He ordered the affairs officer to organize the intelligence of the various territories. The Vane Kingdom had existed for many years and had a very large intelligence network. Every time, the lords would submit reports about their territories, so it was very convenient to collect them. Not long after, the affairs officer returned to the banquet courtyard and organized a few pages of reports. King Gallo took a look, shook his head, and said, "They are all normal infectious diseases. There doesn't seem to be any large-scale new symptoms." Han Shao raised his eyebrows and said, It might not be an illness. It could also be an abnormal behavior, such as drowsiness. King Gallo was stunned. Who would check their sleep for no reason? Everyone would close their doors and sleep. Who would talk about the quality of their sleep the night before? There was no record of the sleep situation of the people. King Gallo suddenly thought of something and said, "The mine production of the various territories this year has decreased by 16% compared to last year, but the mine veins have not dried up. Plus, there are more miners than last year. The only factor that can affect the production seems to be working hours. Could it be related to this? Maybe." Upon hearing that, Han Shao took another look at King Gallo. To be able to find a hidden connection from a seemingly unrelated matter, this king seemed to be quite capable. The incubation period of the mutation virus was very long, and there were many ways for it to spread. The early symptoms of the infected were drowsiness, and they became more and more prone to drowsiness. The symptoms would continue to worsen, and at most, they could sleep for 2 to 3 days. At that time, the mutation virus was about to break out. The higher the growth rate of the virus, the shorter the incubation period, and the more severe the symptoms. It could even skip the drowsiness and enter the next stage. I wonder how Blue Star is doing now, Han Shao thought to himself. King Gallo was a little worried, and asked if there was a solution. Han Shao shook his head and said that he did not know what it was, but they had better be careful. Then, he left. Han Shao had already obtained the information he wanted and reminded King Gallo so that Planet Dawn would not be caught off guard. After all, this planet was also one of the mission targets. During the incubation period of the mutation virus, Han Shao did not have any solution unless he was willing to give up on the mutation disaster mission that had not started yet. Furthermore, he had to take a huge risk and hand over the 7th generation of the mutation virus to Ghidorah to create the antidote before the disaster happened. He also had to face Ghidorah's suspicions and interrogation. Doing so would be too much of a loss. He could only wait until the disaster happened and cause a commotion. When Ghidorah and Dark Star officially clashed, only then would he be able to bring out the greatest value of what he had. The only thing I can do to prepare for the mutation disaster is to increase my own combat strength. I will have to wait for the right time for everything else. The next day, Han Shao rejected King Gallo's invitation again and left the king's capital. He called for a nearby partner's spaceship in the wilderness, picked up Haluz and Rizar, and returned to Uberly Hub. Brother Lin received Han Zhao's communicator number and happily left with his men. The Black Star mercenary could be considered a celebrity in Uberly Hub. He finally enjoyed the treatment of the Sky Ring army that he had seen when he first came to Uberly Hub a year ago. He did not need to line up, and he had priority in many services. As the group walked on the road, many mercenaries and passers-by looked at them kindly and nodded. After returning to the stronghold, Han Shao knocked Rizar unconscious and placed him in an empty room to be used as a prison. He left him there for the time being, as there was something more important that he needed to pay attention to. The International League would begin in 3 days. The International League was split into 2 stages. The first round was the regular season, where all the participants would be split into groups and take turns to battle. The top 8 teams with the highest points would enter the international finals, and the top 16 teams with the highest points would enter the singles competition. The second stage of the finals would be a fight to the death. The winner of the best of 5 would be decided in the end. On the Chinese side, the qualified teams were King Admiral's Dynasty, Hao Tian's Long Sky, and Li Ji's Temple of God. As for the singles competition, the participants were King Admiral, Snowflower, and Mad Blade's Raging Sword. The other professional players who did not make it into the finals would train with them day and night, generously lending their equipment to the participants. At such an important moment, everyone put down their daily grudges and were united. The clubs of every country were like this, giving the best equipment and skills to the participants. Every participant had the best essence. This was their first time appearing in an international league. Other than King Admiral, who was the calmest, the other participants were more or less nervous. Not only them, the professional players of every country had the same mentality, nervous and expectant. With the big event approaching, the passion of the players was ignited again. The forums were filled with information about the clubs of every country. All sorts of analysis and prediction posts were posted. Compared to the regional league, the excitement of the international league was even higher. Players from different countries discussed it together, and the forums were very lively. Pork Bun was the first to enjoy the benefits of being in a favorable position. He temporarily stopped the Black Star chapter that had already been done for 16 episodes and made a special chapter to interview the Chinese participants in the mercenary group before the competition. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.